start going crazy. Sharon, Sharon, Sharon. Least favorite part. Sharing part. I'm gonna find an easier way to do this one of these days. France, where I don't have to go on 2 hours ahead of time. And do all this. This is nuts. I mean, I gotta do it. It's part of putting the show out there. But geez, I have to start somewhere early. Don't want to be the proverbial tree in the woods. Pretty easy so far. Probably should not have said it out loud. It's going on. We'll probably jinx everything. Hello and welcome.
Hi.
I am on my annoying sharing bit. We will be there. We will go live in about 3 minutes. As you well know, even with some of the best computer programmers on the planet, cannot share to multiple places at the same time on Facebook, so I have to do it one by one. And that is what I am in the middle of doing.
I understand.
You think they could give you build a list or something, name it like an email list, and then just
You mean to like your different...
just click one thing and be done with it, and it just doesn't happen. So we did our national pages. I'm now doing the group pages. I do hope I did not take you from anything exciting today.
I'm just hanging out in the mountains.
The mountains? Oh, so you're not in Florida?
No, not right now. I'm in Asheville.
Another bastion of liberalism.
I mean, up until recently, they had Madison Cawthorn.
Well, yeah. Yeah, what do you say to that?
Well,
it's almost like an absurdity to the point that you don't really argue back. I mean,
it's just so gerrymandered like everything else. So even though Asheville is extremely progressive and socially...
They're the blue island in a bigger...
Yeah, that's just the way it is.
Yeah. Well, I sometimes... Jeez, I gotta shut up here. I do sometimes get in trouble with fellow Democrats and progressives here in Pennsylvania.
What part of the state are you in?
I am in the Lehigh Valley. If that means anything to you. Allentown, Bethlehem, Easton.
I think that's where my friend... Do you know Steve Grumbine?
No.
You don't know Steve? He does a show. Has many shows, but Real Progressive is Macro and Cheese. He's on with Jordan Sheraton quite a bit.
We are about 10 miles from the Jersey border.
Oh, okay.
I was born and raised in New Jersey, and I still, at times, find myself just gobsmacked at the difference between the two states.
Yeah,
and how Pennsylvania has learned, either by choice or by gerrymander, if you will, how little it has learned from New Jersey. Much of what New Jersey does, Pennsylvania could do. So I find it.
So you don't think Dr. Oz will be able to come in from New Jersey and solve all your problems?
I do not. In fact, I think he's going to lose. All right, I have to start. I'm a little late. So we will be live in 3, 2, 1. about a whopping 60 seconds late. Welcome, 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 welcome to everyone around the globe from my humble second bedroom here in Bethlehem Landfill Township, a wholly owned subsidiary of Waste Management following the purchase of our township council by the landfill so they can expand, make more money, and not pay any taxes. It's kind of cool. It's like, it's kind of like naming rights on a stadium. You know, Lincoln Financial Field, MetLife Stadium. You know how it goes. We're just Bethlehem Landfill Township now, formerly known as Lower Saucon Township, under the dictatorial control of Jason Bononis. He'll probably be suing me. I expect the letter to come before the show ends. Saucon Valley, part of the Lehigh Valley in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania in these United States, on this planet Earth. The only one we have third rock from the sun in the Terran solar system, part of the Milky Way galaxy. This is the Kennedy Effect, live with you for the 17th of July, 2022. Thank you all for being here. I think I might have lied to you a tiny bit last week, saying that we would be here directly with you all the way through Labor Day. I'm not sure that that's going to happen because Kristen and I just got invited to a very big rally and protest next Sunday in Philadelphia, and I don't know that I will be able to get back here with you to be here with you live. And I don't know if I'm going to be speaking at this event, so it might not be a great event. Any event where I'm not speaking, it's just a tick. It's a tick below. I'm kidding. I'm absolutely kidding. Way smarter and better speaking people than I will be speaking at this event. It's actually a Tax the Rich rally in Philadelphia, which might sound like a very foreign concept to you, but shocker kids, we did it before. We used to do it in this country. We used to tax people who had all the money. Thomas Jefferson and James Madison themselves fought for the original progressive tax system. They fought for the estate tax. They fought for the inheritance tax. And the goal of which, and I quote, to prevent the establishment of a permanent upper class. Now, currently, the three richest people in this country have as much wealth as the bottom two-thirds. Think about that. Worst wealth disparity in this country since the Republican Great Depression of the late 20s and 30s. It is unsustainable. It's also unsustainable when you pile the faux, fake, not even real by textbook definitions of inflation, but rather the price gouging that we're seeing going on. So we can get into all that. I will not keep you waiting for all of the 100 places we have shared across Facebook. Thank you all for not just allowing us to share to your groups and pages, but for you listening and watching in every single one of them. We are very, very grateful. As I say here multiple times per week, we could not be here if you are not there. If you would like to take part in the conversation, if you want to say questions, comments, yell, scream, agree, disagree, anything of the sort, please come to our home group Facebook page, That Other Side of Information. You can stay exactly right where you are. Watch, enjoy, listen, whatever you're doing on this late Sunday very summer afternoon here in the Lehigh Valley. But if you want to take part in the conversation, please come over to our home group Facebook page, That Other Side of Information. Our sisters, brothers, friends, and family at hot101.net, welcome back to the program for allowing us onto your desktops, your laptops, your tablets, your phones, your Bluetooth devices on hot101.net. If you don't know how to listen to hot101.net, well, then you haven't been listening to me every single week tell you that our name is our address. It's hot101.net. You can go to the Apple App Store for an Apple device, the Google Play Store for an Android device. If you have any other type of device, you can use the TuneIn Radio app, go to the search bar, and type in hot101.net. And of course, America's new favorite game show, Can Jeff Trip Your Alexa? You can now tell Alexa to play hot101.net. And of course, TCP, the Culture Professional, out of Lancaster, PA, morning show returns tomorrow, and you can find my program there on the Roku channel for TCP as well. Let's get to our guest, who has been very kind to take time away from family again on a Sunday. All our guests take time away from family and so on a Sunday afternoon. Just still kind of traditionally family time here in the good old USA. And that is Jen Perelman, who is an attorney, activist. It's a laundry list. If you saw the Facebook post, there is a laundry list of things that Jen does. and I'll let her tell you about that. I never define guests; I let them tell you who they are. But we're very graced to have her here, and I want to tell you why, because I always think it's interesting and informational, and I learn something from it when I have the ability to have fellow hosts on, especially ones that have way bigger programs than mine, to see what they're hearing, how they're being treated, what kind of pushback they might be getting, what kind of topics they're talking about. Is it different than what we cover here? Is it a different style? All of that kind of thing. And of course, I'm sure there'll be a couple mentions of the issues of the day as we proceed. So Jen, I want to say thank you, of course, and welcome to the program.
Thank you so much for having me on.
Well, I appreciate you coming, and I want to start very, very simply. I want to start the same way that I start with every guest, new or reoccurring, and that is, who is Jen Perelman, and how did you get here?
I've had several different lifetimes, if I were looking at it that way. So my original background, education-wise, was journalism. I went to undergraduate for journalism. I was going to be the next Woodward or Bernstein. Like, that was my mission. I ended up going into advertising and marketing instead, and ended up going through media relations and going down this road, and then eventually decided that I wanted to lobby for nonprofits. I wanted to be, I knew that our system is based on corruption and lobbying, right? Like, I've always known that for as long as I can remember. So I wanted to do that for the good guys. Like, my thought was, I'm going to be a lobbyist for somebody like, Barry Scheck of the Innocence Project, or, something like that, right? So I went
lobbyist for the people who don't have lobbyists.
Right. My thought was nonprofit. At the time, I was working for the Indiana Chamber of Commerce as their media relations manager. And yeah, the chamber was all about lobbying for business purposes. I was their media relations manager. I wasn't a lobbyist for them, but it made me realize that the best way to go about doing that would be to go to law school to, in terms of really understanding policy. It's not like it's required, but I knew it would be a smart move. So I went to law school wanting to be a lobbyist and be involved in policy. But then I ended up practicing for a while. I ended up doing criminal defense for a while. I've done some corporate litigation stuff, different firms, a bunch of different things. And then I was taking time off for about 10 years. I wasn't working. I was home. I had 2 boys. And I just started getting back into the political scene locally. I'd always volunteered on political campaigns. And then a friend of mine, who is now my business partner, we were just talking one day, and when he realized my demographic and where I lived and all of that, he was like, "You should challenge Debbie, and you should do that. You would be very formidable. You could do that. We could maybe, And I'm like, don't be ridiculous. People have told me I should run for office, but I've always said, it's so funny, I've always said, I can't be bought, I don't lie, and I smoke weed. And those
Debbie,
were always...
We should say for everybody who doesn't know, Debbie is whom?
Debbie Wasserman Schultz. I'm sorry, Debbie Wasserman Schultz, who is my congresswoman in Florida's, well, it was the 23rd district, now we're the 25th district, but yes.
And former chair of the DNC.
Former, and yes, having to resign chair of the DNC,
yep.
And who cheated Bernie, and anybody who was involved.
Rather openly as well. Rather openly.
Brazen. Yeah. She's brazenly corrupt. So he said, you should challenge her. And at first I thought, that's ridiculous. And then I thought, no, it's really not ridiculous if you think about like what my background is and what my experience is. It really isn't that ridiculous. And the reality is, until he came along, people would say, oh, you should run. But nobody up until him ever offered to do it with me. Nobody ever offered to help me do that, right? So
there is a conception among, your friends think highly enough of you to really look you in the face in a serious way and say, you should do this. We think you'd be great doing this.
Yeah.
But either they, it's going to sound way harsher than I mean it, from a lack of knowledge of the process, just think you kind of pick yourself up out of bed one day and say, now I'm in and I'm running. And the all of the other stuff that goes with it, the media, the communications, the formulation of a platform, the work on presentation, because politics is an art. It's not. There's a difference between politics and activism. I'm hoping we can get into that perhaps.
Yeah.
But we seem to. There's a lot of folks who seem to think, you know, they're in some of the burn it all down protests and think, well, I'm going to burn it down from the inside. Well, no, there's a very substantial difference, a very tangible difference between being a politician and being an activist. And President Kennedy, you know, said that politics can and should be a noble profession, and I still think that it can be. But politician doesn't have to be a dirty word. There's a big difference between the two things. So they say that to you in a very complimentary way. You'd be great doing this, but then I think we don't, unless it's like you and I who do this every day. How much goes into a campaign is staggering.
Right.
It's absolutely staggering.
Right. Like if I were to walk down to, let's say I lived in a small town and I walk down to City Hall and say, I want to run for city commission. That's the level I think that people think of when they tell you, you should run for office. Like, and I think that if you live in certain places, it could be that way. You know, if you live in like I'm in North Carolina right now, there's small towns where it probably isn't that big of a deal to go run for office because, you know, there's only like 20 people there. So I think it's all frame of reference, but so we just decided we were going to challenge Debbie. It's always been a partnership. And we ran a service-based campaign. I decided very early on that if I'm going to spend 18 months running for Congress, knowing that I'm likely going to lose, that the only way I would do it is if we did a service campaign. So our volunteers were called GenCorps, and we spent 18 months doing community service. We did 2 community gardens. We would do beach cleanups. We would do the veterans nursing home birthdays. We did food distributions. We did, you know, like everything. We would go to, the Key Club is having a park cleanup, and all the GenCorps people would show up. And, you know, we were wearing my campaign t-shirts. I'm not stupid, you know, like there is a marketing element involved in it. But when you reach people in a capacity that you're there to serve them, it changes their lives. Like I can't quite explain it. And I would be canvassing for people and I would actually knock on doors because that's what you do. And I would always ask the person, like, is there anything I can do to help you? What do you need? Where are you right now? Is there something that I might be able to help you with? And sometimes there were small things. Sometimes it was just things that they like, no, I can't, you know, get you healthcare tomorrow, right? Like certain things. But when they know somebody's fighting for them and giving a crap about them and is at least telling them, like being transparent, they will support you. And they don't even have to agree with you on all sorts of policy. That's what I've learned.
2 things that I can take from that I would be curious if you agree or disagree. Even in this modern era, this exceptionally modern era that's allowing you and I to speak like this from thousands, well, Asheville, you're probably 15-ish 100 miles away from me. And for my voice and sadly my face and your voice and thankfully for me your face to go literally around the globe, and for me to be on 100 different places in Facebook, 2 internet radio stations and a TV station, all through one computer, it's still knocking doors, isn't it? It's still knocking doors.
100%. Well, okay. It's still knocking doors for a grassroots campaign.
Right.
If you are a small dollar raising, you know, grassroots campaign, a true, real people powered campaign, that's all you've got because you don't have the money for a lot of mailers and advertising on TV, and you don't have that. But what you do have are volunteers. And the thing I learned when I'm running against Debbie is that she can flood your mailbox with flyers and she could have ads on the TV. She's got the money for it, no doubt. And she doesn't have 100 volunteers knocking on doors and talking to people about her. If she pays canvassers, she'll pay canvassers that they pay to go out and hand out flyers and whatever. They're all paid. Her whole staff, it's like everybody was paid. So for us, the ground game is crucial. It's crucial.
The other thing I wanted to take from that is something that I will tell candidates here in the Commonwealth as well, and that is the not in any way, shape, or form old-fashioned ideal of constituent services, which is exactly what you're supposed to be running for office for in the first damn place. So when you do have those conversations, either at the door or on the phone, or somebody, you know, emails you through the website or whatever and says, I need help, nobody will help me. And I understand exactly what you're saying. You're not going to solve the healthcare crisis. You're not going to cut the defense budget in half all by yourself. But if somebody needs, I don't know, they need the paratransit to stop at their corner instead of the corner 10 blocks away because, by the way, it's paratransit and they can't get there. That's a big deal. That's a big deal to them. Constituent services means, I tell candidates who are not in office, start providing constituent services. Show folks that you, not just that you want the job, but that you can do the job and that you're going to do it in a fundamentally different way than the person that you're running against.
Yeah, well, that's exactly what I said. And it's funny because I'm in the process of writing a book with my partner that's sort of like a tell-all versus, and also with ideas and suggestions for running small dollar grassroots campaigns. But when we first decided to do this, and I decided to do a service-based campaign, our entire mission and of my show now is called, we say, transforming politics into service. I decided very early on that if you want to be the representative, be the representative. And when you're curious about the kind of things that I would do for people, prime example. So I forget what event I met some of these residents at. I don't remember what event it was. I met a group of residents that live in, are you familiar with South Florida at all?
I mean, you know,
okay.
I suppose from a tourist
standpoint. There's an area called Dania Beach that's, you know, in between basically Fort Lauderdale and Miami somewhere. Okay, Dania Beach. And Dania Beach has sections of it that are more valuable money-wise than others, okay? Like there are certain sections of Dania that get a lot more attention than others, let's say. And there's this section of Dania that they're wanting to do this huge development that will screw these people so badly with having to close this road and all of this stuff. Like, I don't even need to get into it. Like, these people are so upset. There's nobody. And so all I did was every time they were going into their city council, I showed up and stood there with them. And sometimes I'd have people with me. And I got to tell you, just being there for people and standing there with them, it's huge. It's huge. Nobody's ever given a crap to do that. That would be, and the truth is, if I were their congressional representative, I'd still do that. And of course, then it has a lot more power to it. Then of course, you might get things done for people, but people really just want somebody to fight for them and be honest with them. That's what people want. And it's very apparent to me everywhere I go that that's the case. And across all political spectrum, that's the case.
This is probably making for terribly boring radio and television, but it's very refreshing to hear that. Because I tell folks the same thing. I think that we as Democrats do not do enough on our own behalf. I think one of the things that we learned from Senator Sanders and Senator Warren, for that matter, is that we can be a lot of different things to appeal to people. And it's not about wearing, if I could use the analogy, it's not about wearing different faces to different people, if you understand, if you know what I'm getting at.
No, absolutely.
But I can, when the MAGA person rushes up to me and starts having a go, I'd have a bloody go right back. Because you know what, I think we also have to admit that roughly 30% of the Republican Party's gone. We're never reaching those people. Ever, ever, ever. Even God says in Exodus that the Israelites have to wander the desert for 40 years for a generation to die off. This percentage is gone. We cannot reach them. There's no reaching them.
Right.
But there are people, and I've told this story on the program before. I recently worked for a company where I had to deliver home hospice equipment to folks, beds and oxygen equipment and all this stuff, and I am in extremely poor shape. Not just, I'm not 400 pounds, my body's breaking down. And I would struggle with this equipment. I mean, out of breath, I'm asthmatic, I would just stop, I couldn't lift half of it, and I would just struggle. And I would deliver to some of these houses, and you knew they were Republicans. You knew it. Never could tell you why, but they knew it. I knew it, but they couldn't tell me why, is what I should have said. That's what I meant to say. And they would see me struggling and say, why are you doing this work? And I would say, well, it's America. The only way I can see a doctor. And they would go, that's wrong. It's wrong. And I have told candidates before, I don't think that, I think you can stand in front of that farmer's market and have the pretty far gone, but maybe not red hat wearing Republicans come up to you and scream about abortion and say, look, I think we can do both. We can walk and chew gum. It's a terribly overused analogy, but look, okay, so you and I don't agree on it. Fine. Fine. So let's not talk about it. How about the fact that you can't see a doctor? Why don't we talk about that? How about the fact you can't afford to feed yourself in a proper way? Or even feed yourself enough that you are going to bed hungry every night? How about the fact that your kid's school has lead pipes and lead paint? And asbestos, by the way. But the charter school that you are being forced to fund, well, I mean, they got massaging chairs. I mean, and that if there's, whatever your top 10 issues are, even if we agree on 3 of them, 4 of them, you and I agree on a hell of a lot more than the person you keep voting for does. We can be a lot of different things. And it kind of, isn't it about time that we become all of those things?
I think that, and I think that we need to not just be so purist about so many different things. It's exactly what you're saying. Like, I have Republican colleagues in South Florida that I met because they were protesting the same drilling in the Everglades that I was protesting, and they support Everglades restoration. So it's not that I don't care that they might be anti-choice. I mean, yeah, that kind of bothers me, but I'm going to still work with them and do everything I can to fight the oil drilling in the Everglades, because why would we not have as big of a coalition as we could have for every single issue? And, even with the people that are anti-choice, and I can talk to I could go to like the fish fry at the church to the Elks Club to a black tie thing in the same day and be perfectly content talking. And what I'm saying is exactly the same. It's just what you're saying, and it's true, is you have to sort of explain to different people different ways that make sense to them. But the policy ideas and what I'm talking about never changes. Like, that's always the same, regardless. So, but yeah, I think most people agree on most things in terms of economic justice, wealth inequality, mostly civil liberties issues. Actually, for the most part, people agree on civil liberties issues. So most things we do agree on, and they keep us fighting. They keep these ridiculous things.
Isn't that what we're seeing, though, in the wake of the Roe overturn? Is that there's a significant number of self-identified Republicans, and I say that because I don't think there's a lot of real ones.
Right.
They're self-identified. They think they're Republicans because their dads were, or because, Eisenhower was a good guy. That party's gone, and it's long gone, by the way. I'm not sure Reagan would be a Republican at this point, and he started the whole decline of this country. But that said, there's a significant amount of Republicans, and I'm seeing it, that say, yeah, you know what? The idea, frankly, I put myself in this category. It's not a popular category, but I put myself in it. I wish no woman ever had to face the decision to have an abortion. The idea of the procedure itself bothers me. But at the end of the day, it's absolutely none of my drop-dead effing business what you do with your body. And I think that there's a significant amount, very measurable amount of Republicans who feel the same way. I hope you, Jen, would never have to face that decision.
Right.
And the idea of you doing that makes me sick. But by the way, I have no business to tell you what to do. And I think it's a conversation I think we can have, in the similar vein as of fracking here in Pennsylvania, or drilling oil drilling in the Everglades, or whatever it might be. If we can build that bridge and start that conversation somewhere, I'll take that bridge every day of the week. But on the other hand, we talked before we went live here. You're in Asheville, North Carolina. They just had, they were blessed to come out from under the thumb of Madison Cawthorn. But even though Asheville itself might be a very deep blue little island in a larger Red Sea, at some point as well, and I actually kind of make this distinction with the red hats, you get the government you vote for to an extent, don't you?
We do. I think the sort of sad thing about it, and I think about myself growing up, I mean, look, I voted for Bill Clinton twice. I voted for Barack Obama twice. And, looking back, that whole concept of neoliberalism and corporatism and throwing labor under the bus and not recognizing a lot of those sort of red flags sooner really bothers me. But I absolutely take accountability for where we are now. That being said, when you know better, you do better. And now well, that's what we're trying to do. And I know that those theories, those types of politics, only serves very few and very wealthy people. And that has nothing to do with Republican or Democrat. That's just the oligarchy that we live in. They own both parties equally. It doesn't really matter. They all hedge their bets. All of those multi-bazillionaire people and the Koch brothers and all of those people, they are buying candidates on both sides of that aisle. They hedge their bets. And different industries, are clearly more supportive of Republican candidates than others. And they're all corporate whores. Okay, that's the reality. They're all if you take money from corporate interests, you do their bidding. You're their bitch. That's all there is to it. And there's only 2 senators that don't, and that's Bernie and Rand Paul. And in Congress, you have a handful more. You do. We're starting to see penetration by non-corporate interests, but really until that happens, and it doesn't matter the party. I truly believe that, and I'm actually tomorrow having on a friend who is a non-corporate Republican running for city council in Cape Coral, Florida. And I'm good with that. If your district is conservative and you're representing conservative people, then that is who you should be. And that is what you're representing. And I have no problem with that. If you're not taking corporate money and they don't like you, they won't vote for you. So, you're more beholden to the people, let those chips fall where they may. So we just need to get the corporate interests out of both parties. And that's what people are missing. And we're infighting ridiculous. I spend more time fighting corporate Democrats than I do fighting Republicans. And it's infuriating.
Move to amend.org, everyone, and end Citizens United. And then, by the way, it can be done kind of an end around the Constitution. Move to amend is actually the movement to formally amend the Constitution to declare that money is not speech and corporations are not people. But there's also I think I have that website group right. I think it is the End Citizens United that is looking to do it on the state level. If enough states can pass their own.
Correct.
To do such a thing, and I think I might have the wrong group though. I don't know if Move to Amend is
Right now, all we have is to elect people that aren't taking the corporate money and are able to break through fighting against that money on the other side. Like, it's very Sisyphusian, like it's really ridiculous, but that's what we're dealing with.
Why am I suspect, though, and believe me, not to question your facts, because you just taught me something that I didn't know. Why do I somehow believe that money is making it to Rand Paul?
It very well might be. Hey, if you, but it's public, based on the public information, based on.
Yeah.
I hear you, and mm-hmm. I don't know, but I will tell you,
especially a guy that twisted.
He is, and yet I would get with him to talk about getting us out of every single war. I would talk with him about that and work with him about that, and he's, but yet he's the person that will fight to get us out of Yemen. He's the person who's, so.
He actually did work, I think, directly on legislation, if I'm not mistaken, with Bernie and
yes.
Warren to end arms sales to the Saudis, because mm-hmm. they're, just turning and using it. An unprovoked started Saudi-led war in Yemen for seemingly no reason. The public reasoning is that they're trying to help the Yemenis government defend against an internal coup, but it seems to be absolutely nothing of the sort, other than a very, dare I say, a very Russian effort similar to Ukraine, just flatten everything in Yemen. If they kill everyone along the way, that's perfectly fine too. I don't know if it's they want the oil fields under it. I don't know if they want the coast access. I don't know what the Saudis are trying to achieve in Yemen, to be honest. But they're using white phosphorus, weaponry, cluster bombs, everything short of nuclear that's been banned, by the Geneva Conventions. They're doing it, and it seems, and this has been going on for years now, by the way, folks, completely unprovoked, or at least seemingly completely unrevoked. They were not getting unprovoked. They were not, getting cross-border attacks from Yemen or anything of the sort. They're starving, hundreds of thousands of people and just bombing the country into oblivion, simply, seemingly, because they can, and because we keep giving them the spare parts and the additional armaments with which to do so. The largest exporter, by the way, folks, of armaments, of weaponry on the planet is the United States. It is the only category of anything in the on the planet that we are still the #1 exporter of. I've told you all of this before. When Mr. Reagan came to power on January 20th of 1981, the United States was the largest industrial power on Earth. We were the largest importer of raw materials and exporter of finished goods in 8 years. That had been reversed. We were the largest exporter of raw materials and importer of finished goods. We were the largest creditor nation, meaning we loaned more money out than we borrowed. Around the planet, when Reagan came to power, by the time he was done, we were the largest debtor nation. He increased the national debt tenfold. I believe the national debt when he came to power, left over from President Carter, was somewhere in the $900 million range. 900 million, not billion, 900 million. When Reagan left, it was over, I want to say it was 5.2, 5.3 trillion. So there you go. There's all that. 5:37, I'm a little late. 100 places across Facebook. Thank you all for being there. If you want to come and take part in the live commentary and chat and so on, you lot are very quiet today. I don't know if it's just you're all warm, you're all having a beer by the pool. I don't know what you're up to, but it's very quiet. But we are thrilled that you are here nonetheless. Stay where you are if you wish. Come to our home group Facebook page, that other side of information, if you want to chat with us. Hot101.net, your laptop, your desktop, your tablet, your Bluetooth, in the car, whatever it is that you might be using. Thank you for allowing us. Again, Apple App Store, Google Play Store for Android, and the TuneIn radio app. And of course, you can tell Alexa to play Hot101.net, and TCP, Culture Professional from Lancaster, the morning show, returns tomorrow morning. I caught a couple minutes of your program. I want to say it wasn't too much more than a month ago. I think it was shortly before, the program was shortly before I contacted you, and you and a co-host were having a pretty good slay at the Democratic Party. I do believe that the Democratic Party is the only functioning political party left in the country. And we certainly are not perfect. Goodness knows. But I also think we're the only ones trying. What am I missing?
You are a certain level of cynicism and realism and just knowing what I know, like, they're not trying. They've never really been trying. They are set up as the Mick resistance. It's all political theater. They're not trying to do jack shit. We had 4 Democrat presidential administrations since Roe versus Wade that could have codified Roe, that had majorities, that didn't do so. And why? Because they love to fundraise off of fear baiting about Republicans and Roe. So now here we are. But in the meantime, the Democrats also approved all of Trump's judicial appointments. You had Obama not only really get RBG to step down when she needed to, because let's be real, if the president really wants something done, it gets done. Okay, like she needed to step down, and he didn't fight for Garland. That's two. We would have had two. It's like they want to put everything on the Republicans, but they're not really fighting. Joe Biden himself, every single thing that he could do within his power that he is choosing not to do is a failure on his part. There are 2,700 incarcerated people in federal correctional facilities for nonviolent drug offenses that Joe Biden could pardon. There are he could forgive student loan debt. He could declare a national emergency and create a clean energy grid. All of these things he could be doing, and he's doing nothing. And the reason he's doing nothing is because they don't really want to do anything. It's not real. It's a fiction. And yes, they're seemingly better than the Republicans, who are completely right-wing fascist wackadoodles. So it's not hard to be better than that. But they're just as corporate, and it's really what we're seeing is late-stage capitalism imploding on us. We've privatized and profitized everything that we need, everything that are important services. And this is what's happening. We've profitized corrections and healthcare and education, and we're seeing this play out over generations of people. And people are getting dumber and dumber in this country from education being so horrendous. We have horrid healthcare. People are filing bankruptcy from healthcare. First of all, and then we have something called student lunch debt. Student lunch debt. Okay, so how come we have those things when we've had 4 Democratic administrations that just keep telling us, just keep voting for us. This is the most important election of our life. Just vote for us. Just got to vote blue. The Republicans are crazy. Okay, well, we've been doing that. And we still just lost the rights for half the people in this country. So, it's you can't keep selling me that anymore.
Right, there's a ton to unpack there. Let me try to unpack some of it. Let's hope that my brain doesn't forget all of my other points, because it usually does. It's old and there's a lot of cobwebs up there. But you and I were able to talk before we went live about the difference between politics and activism. There's nothing in a country of 330 million people that you can paint with a broad brush. But there is a generality within the activist community to burn it all down. It seems to me, if we look at the Democratic Party as the house that we live in, we can burn it down. But there's only 2 things that we're going to be left with: a pile of ash and nowhere to live. But we can get in and try and restore the house. We can fix the bathrooms, we can fix the kitchen, and we can make it a place where we can all live. Maybe not all agree all the time, but at least we can all live there. Am I naive, or does any of that make sense? Or are you in the burn it down camp, or are you in the take the next step, turn the page of the activism, and what do we do next? There's so many activists, and hell, they're right here in Lehigh Valley too. We're going to burn it all down, and this sucks, and you suck, and this all sucks, and everything sucks, and we hate all of you, and we're going to burn it down. And that never turns into change. It never turns, the Supreme Court, the Republican court, because it's not a conservative court, it's a Republican court, by design.
Yes.
And by money.
Yes.
Politics got us into that. And it's politics that's going to get us out of it.
Correct.
So where's the balance between, yes, Democrats, you failed. Is there a but after that, or you failed and screw you?
No, I understand what you're saying. So let me proffer this, okay? So you see it as wanting to burn it all down. I view it as
I think we criticize a thing because we love it.
Yeah.
Specifically because we love it. We don't criticize it because we hate it. Generally speaking, again, most Americans, if you despise something bad enough, you ignore it. You walk away from it. The difference, the opposite of love is not hate, it's apathy. Yeah. So we criticize our party, which is how I constantly refer to it. It's our party. We criticize it because we love it and because we know it can do better. And our own history tells us that. It was a democratic socialist who was elected 4 times to be president, and that rebuilt an entire continent. A continent now that does democracy a hell of a lot better than we do.
So let me ask you a question. Here's a question for you. Do you think that somebody like FDR or somebody like LBJ, if they wanted to get something done, that somebody like Joe Manchin would be the cause of it not getting done? See, that's where it starts to get kind of iffy to me. That's just the WWF bad guy crap. I just wanted to say this to you. So I look at the Democratic Party like it is on fire, and I'm trying to put it out. So it's interesting because I don't think that we need to burn it all down. I often talk about what we call the inside and outside strategies. Mm-hmm. They need to work together. The politicians on the inside only have as much power as the people on the outside stand up behind them and give them. That's how this works together. And I think both are very important. I am extra critical.
Well, let's think of it this way, though. Bernie was a nut. Remember?
Yeah.
In 2016?
Not to me.
Well, no, and not to me either. But the candidate, and President Obama himself in 2008 ran as Franklin Roosevelt. He ran as John Kennedy and then governed as Bill Clinton.
Yeah. I have so much
but there's a difference. I'm trying to make the difference between how he campaigned and how he governed.
Correct.
There is a pretty freaking wide gap there.
Yeah.
But when Bernie ran in 16, and we think about the, he only got, numbers is escaping me. There was not a significant number of votes total less than Secretary Clinton got at that point, but a $15 minimum wage was nuts. We can't do that.
Right.
We can't have single-payer health care. Oh, by the way, we already do have a single-payer health care system in this country. It's called the VA. We can't reimpose tariffs to rebuild a domestic industrial base. We can't do that. And we can't, and we can't, and we can't, and we can't. And look where the party is now. There's the Progressive Caucus is the largest caucus in the House.
It's a joke.
There's over 130 co-sponsors to the single-payer bill. The $15 minimum wage, not as much as it should, which is still, by the way, below the poverty line. It's still not a livable wage. But a $15 wage has pushed itself through a lot of the private sector. Do you see zero improvement, or just not enough, or not fast enough, or not sustainable, or where is that?
Okay, so I see vast improvement since Bernie. I think he's changed the entire narrative around politics and campaigning in this country in a way that was very necessary. And I'm very thankful for everything he did. And you're right, we weren't talking about things like, single payer healthcare, and now we are, and that's the progress. So I very much see the progress. But what I also see is that the establishment Democratic Party, and again, I'm not talking about people registered as Dems all over the country. I'm not talking about those people. I'm talking about the people in charge of the party, in charge of the platform, in charge of the primaries and the super delegates and all of their nonsense. Those people, they are
I would say primarily leftover Clinton folks.
Very much, well, Hillary is still very much in control of the DNC. There's no way around it. And Clinton money is still very much there. It's very much behind people like Kamala and Pete Buttigieg, and that those people that are running the party are really what are holding up the progress that we're trying to have. So the Democrats are basically my first barrier to get through before I can even deal with the Republicans. That's, as a progressive in the party, that's what we feel like. We feel like we can't even fight them until we get through you guys that are still corporate bought. So yes, they're better, but because I'm in their party, I feel like, one, they're more accountable to me. Republicans aren't accountable to me. I'm not a member of their party. So like, I don't have, those aren't the people that I can influence, as well as let's get our shit together and actually represent labor. Let's
Right,
actually be the Labor Party.
We've
And-
actually got a host of, I can't even count them all, Republican state level representatives, state Senate, state rep here in PA who will tell you openly, oh, you're a Democrat, I don't represent you.
Of course.
Or you didn't vote for me, I don't care what you think about anything.
I know.
Just whatever. And that's an ideal that's gone, sadly, that has left our country. Again, I basically, Tom Hartman will say repeatedly throughout the week that we can talk about Roe, the environment, minimum wage, health, we can talk about all of it. Supreme Court, all of it and any of it. Until Citizens United is overturned, nothing changes. It is all about money. The Koch network, there's only one brother.
Now.
we tend to talk about the Koch brothers.
Yeah.
There is only one. I have encouraged you folks on this program before, and I have not done it in a while. Just to use the fancy Google machine and search for David Koch's 1980 platform for vice president. And I have a meme of it somewhere. It'll take me way too long to find.
Was it a flat tax?
Flat tax was one of it. It was also to eliminate the Department of Education, eliminate the Department of Environmental Protection, eliminate the Labor Department, eliminate the Securities and Exchange Commission, get government completely out of education, period. Not just to take the department out, but get government out of the way.
Right.
Basically stripped the government down to the military and the judicial branch, and that was pretty much it. So look at that list, and it's exactly what you see out of the modern day Republican movement. It's exactly what you see. It is libertarianism. It is it's not a function of government. It's not a governmental philosophy. It's a lack of government philosophy. It's the ending of government entirely. And there's a tiny little bit of prosperity doctrine in there, that we're the rich folks, so that we're the ones that God blessed. We're the ones that'll run everything for you. But is it oversimplified, let's put it that way, to say that none of this changes till the money changes?
Yeah. I mean, ultimately, yes, that's what we're trying to do. And we're chipping away. That's what it feels like. It feels like there's this huge wall and we're chipping away, and you get people in there like your squad, AOC, you get them in there and like them, criticize them, whatever it is. They're not beholden to corporate interests. I can't speak as to their politics and what they're playing their long game for their careers. That's all elements that are involved, but I can just speak to they're non-corporate and they're actually popular with the people of their district. They're not just bought to sit in that seat like a throne. And I think the more of those people we get in, the scale will tip. You know, when you talk about the Progressive Caucus, yeah, there's people, Chantel Brown is a member of the Progressive Caucus, okay? Darren Soto in Florida is a member of the Progressive Caucus. So you can't go by that. It has nothing to do with that. It has to do with do they want progressive things to happen? Like, do they support a progressive platform? But it's also, are they corporate funded? Because so long as somebody is corporate funded, they are speaking for corporations, not for us. Actually, they're double dipping. I find it infuriating. And I always say this out there when I think about Debbie. She is my employee. Those are our employees. We pay for them. They get a good amount of money for not a whole lot of time commitment that they have to actually be in DC. They get amazing pension benefits, all of it. And then they have the audacity to double dip and take money from elsewhere, do their bidding for them, and they get to keep their jobs and give themselves a raise. What other universe would this be acceptable behavior? We put them on pedestals. They're not. They're our employees. Nancy Pelosi is our employee. We pay her salary. You should see people's face light up when I basically empower them with that. I'm like, you really do not understand how this works. They're laughing all the way to the bank. Nancy Pelosi, insider trading isn't even a slight problem anymore. They'll just flat out do it right in front of us now. Nobody even cares. And it's like, this is ridiculous. It's the most brazen, we're a banana republic.
What does it mean to you? Because I have this discussion a lot, especially with, again, I talk about Clinton era Democrats. It was really the Clinton era where the party took a 90-degree wrong turn, in my opinion. And that's not to say that the party was perfect before Mr. Clinton. I'm not here to say any of that. I don't know that we remember, it's right in our founding documents to form a more perfect union. When you say more perfect, you're presupposing the fact that it is not perfect and may not ever be. But it is something, a goal that we constantly chase, a line that we work toward. It was the 90s where we took a wrong turn, right? You know, a 90-degree turn south, if you will. Mr. Reagan had destroyed the unions, the traditional form of funding for the Democratic Party, and Bill Clinton figured we got to get the money from somewhere else, and the people around him. And so they thought they would go to corporations, but they would go to corporations that weren't quite as slimy, like banking and insurance, and have to take money from them. But as you said, and as we all know how it's worked out in retrospect, when they buy you, they want something. When you go to the grocery store, you generally walk out with something with you because you bought it. So it's not terribly different than walking the aisles and picking a congressman up off the shelf and paying them and getting what you want. I refer to the Republicans now not just as the person on the street Republican, again, is self-identified. Because if you take them through, Bernie has showed us, if you take them through the policy positions and then you just do not label which party supports that particular position, those folks will agree with it pretty much every time.
Yep.
But the structure, the Republican structure, the money structure, to me is a corporation. The party structure and the elected officials are the employees. And the owners, well, they're the owners. They're the ones that paid for everything. Best investment in the country right now is a politician. You can get 2, 3, 4, 700, 1,000, 2,000 times return for your dollar. Mm-hmm. Even with all of that, what is it, the discussion I tend to have most inside of our own party, and occasionally with self-identified Republicans because the word's been turned into a little bit of a boogeyman. What does it mean to you to be progressive? What is progressive? I'm a progressive. What does that mean when you say it?
Okay, so I think that the term has been so co-opted at this point, and that's part of it. Like, so many people are calling themselves progressive. So I have this.
Aren't we New Deal Democrats? Aren't we Kennedy Democrats? Aren't we?
Well,
Aren't we the history of our own party?
Well, yeah, at one point, but there was still a level, even with Kennedy, of definite corruption and elitism that we have to at least acknowledge. And I do think that was really the first person to look at taking down the deep state. And I think that we saw what happened to him from doing that. But the way I look at a progressive is, do you look around you at everyone else and think that we, one, have a responsibility for the collective, right? Like, I believe we have a responsibility for the least of these because that's the kind of civilization I want to live in. Okay, so one.
By the way, you mean the Christian tenet of "as you do to the least among me"?
I suppose I'm an atheist Jew. So, but I have studied a lot of religion stuff in college.
That's
so
your own issue. I'm not getting into that.
But
the only reason I bring that up is I've had several members of the clergy on this program, and we've talked about the co-option and the weaponizing of Christianity. And I don't mean to drag you off into a different.
No, but if you like that,
I know I asked you a question, but when you just say to me, we're one of the biggest lies that Thatcher told the UK and hoisted on the world, and that Reagan really took in, was that we are not a society. We are not a collective. That what happens to my neighbor has nothing to do with me. We are a group of rugged individuals. Well, if my neighbor's house burns, mine might very well just go with it. So we are a collective. It's what I take from what you just said, and it's not to hoist, Christian, to dump Christian on you either, but just to say for all of the self-identified Christians, because there ain't a lot of real ones of them left either, to say, no, it was Christ that said, oh, as you do unto the least among me, you do to me. Yeah. Not to hell with my neighbor. There's not a to hell with my neighbor anywhere in the Bible that I'm familiar with. Certainly not in the Jeffersonian Bible. But, so when I guess I'm taking a very long loop back to the original question, but when I am asked, what does it mean? I actually don't use progressive much anymore.
Populist? I say populist is what I've been saying.
I will say a New Deal Democrat, or I'm a Democrat from the roots of the party. I'm a Roosevelt, and even though you and I clearly don't agree with it, well, it's my name's right there. I'm a Kennedy Democrat.
Right.
So and well, you know what? I'm really going down a rabbit hole now, but I'm a Kennedy Democrat because I'm the kind of Democrat that would say that even when President Kennedy dropped the top marginal tax rate from 91% to 74%, after about a year, realized that's a mistake. We have to put it back up.
Right.
It's the kind of Democrat that said, fine, we'll send 2,500 advisors to Vietnam and saying, this is turning into a quagmire, and I'm getting out of it now.
That didn't work out so well.
And the kind that said, the Peace Corps is the way that America's going to make friends around the world now, not through militarization and over 800 military bases in 184 countries. It's going to be the Peace Corps. We're going to go build bridges and schools and roads, like the Chinese are doing right now. So and the New Deal, again, the Democratic Socialist president who was elected 4 times.
Right.
That Republicans had feared so much that they had to change the Constitution to make sure it didn't happen again. And the one that tried to go to business at the onset, or at least when he was sworn in, still relatively early into the Great Depression, you need to put people back to work. We'll help you. No, we're not profitable. Nobody has money. Screw you then. I'll do it myself. And did it.
Yeah.
That's who I am. It's the history of our own party. The answers to our problems are in our own history. We simply, again, I think this comes from Bernie, and I give Senator Warren, I think, a little more credit than you, and that's fine. We can disagree. It's part of the strength of the country. To say, wait, our answers are in our own history. We've done all this. We know how to fix these problems. We just have to have the stones to do it. So when someone says to you, you're just another, wink, wink, tree-hugging hippie liberal.
Oh, yeah.
Progressive.
I've been called communist.
Right. Yeah. Well, Kristen and I always make fun of the Republican, the red hat especially, who will come to you when you're at the Democratic table at, the XYZ county fair and say, oh, you damn communist, fascist, liberal, tree-hugging, corporate. Like, wait.
You can't be all those things.
Like, hang on there, kiddo. That was buckshot. You just put pellets all over them. None of that makes sense. So let's start from the beginning. But anyway, I'm sorry. I'm rambling on here. But so what do you say? What do you say? That who are, how do you take that argument onto yourself and give it back to the person to say, because again, when I describe even people who are too young, when I talk about Roosevelt, even Teddy Roosevelt, the first environmentalist, breaking up the trusts. Yes, he was racist. I get it, folks, but let's, please. They can still take that on and say, well, but I believe in that too. Well, then you need to have a think about where you are then. It's not me. You're not challenging me. It's you that needs to have the think.
Yeah. Well, I always used to say, I didn't leave the party. They left me. And it's funny that the word is left because they're so not left enough, but they left me because I'm still about labor. I'm still about those those issues. And so for me, progressive is, do you feel responsibility for the least of these? Do you think that we are entitled as members of this civilization to have a social safety net and everybody gets to live a life of dignity? I don't think everybody deserves to live in a 4,000 square foot house. I don't think that everybody should be the same. I don't think that. I have no problem with there being like, you know, a range, but I don't care how rich the rich get. I care how poor the poor are. So my thought is, as a civilization, is our responsibility to care for the least of these. Anything that moves in the direction of caring for the people is what I think of as a progressive. So if we're gonna, we don't necessarily have to agree on every policy, but are we both wanting everybody to have health care? Do we all think everybody deserves a living wage? Like, those are what I consider progressive values. I don't use the term so much. I tend to say populist, because when you say populist, it really allows you to reach working class people that might be socially conservative. And that's an important bridge to build, because what we're really fighting here is economic justice, right? Injustice is what we're really fighting against. And the only way we're going to be able to do that really successfully is with labor. And the only way to compile labor is to get past some of our social, you know, things and fringe issues and work with people. And so I prefer to say populist messages more, because I think that it can appeal to workers on the right. If you go to, let's say, a John Deere strike, and you're walking on the line at a John Deere strike, you will have Bernie supporters and Trump supporters in that same line, and they don't care about that. So my goal
took me to where I wanted to ask you.
Okay.
Why do you think that our party has not learned enough, or at least not learned the right lessons, right, no pun intended, but not learned the correct lessons from Trump's first election? What do I mean by that? He basically campaigned on Bernie's platform. Now, we know that he lied about all of it.
Correct.
I get that. I get that. So, folks, before you start telling me, well, he didn't do any of that, no effing kidding. I get it, okay? I get it. But I'm asking you to go back, you know, YouTube or whatever video platform you prefer. Look at the campaign speeches. I want to tax people like me. We need to reinstate tariffs on China. We lost our industry because we lowered our tariffs. I'm going to give you all better health care. You don't have good health care now. You can't afford it.
Right.
And access doesn't mean anything. I have access to an Aston Martin. If I ever won a big enough lottery, I'd buy one on a splurge. I've got access to it if I really want it, but I can't buy it because I can't afford it.
Right.
Yeah? So, why haven't we learned, as much as we have learned, and you and I just talked about it a few minutes ago, how much further the party has progressed, no pun intended, from Bernie in 2016 to the fact that we didn't take a lesson from, I almost hate to say it, but we didn't take a lesson from Trump. The way those crowds would go nuts. This billionaire is going to fight for me more than anyone else has.
Yeah.
I mean, that should tell us something, shouldn't it? That actually a progressive message, a New Deal message, a message of fairness, actually resonates with people.
Yeah, well, for sure. And here's the thing. I mean, not to go down like some sort of like Marxian capitalist loophole, but you know, what we're seeing is really end stages of capitalism and people and unrest and greed. And really what happens when people start to feel unrest and malcontent and they don't have jobs and they don't have healthcare and people start getting desperate. And
is it the end of capitalism or the end of unregulated capitalism?
Well,
because Western Europe will tell you that they are capitalistic societies, and
right.
generally they are. They're still working on a New Deal style system.
Right.
Systems we gave them after World War II, when the continent was a piece of
Right.
dust,
No,
and
let
we
me.
rebuilt all these systems. So is it the end of capitalism, or is it the end of completely unregulated capitalism?
Well, it's completely unregulated capitalism, but what I'm talking about more was just like in Marxist theory, what you see is supposedly, this is what I'm saying, this is like the philosophical theory of it all, right? So as capitalism sort of starts to implode based on human greed and nature and just unfettered greed, you really see things going in one of two directions. Something's going to go in one of two directions. Again, this is like the theory. Okay. So you're either going to see a populist uprising on the right, or you're going to see a populist uprising on the left. And that election in 2016 exactly demonstrated that. You had two populist candidates running. Again, forget that he didn't do those things, but two populist campaigns running. You had one on the left and one on the right. Okay. So once that election was over and we ended up with the Trumpists and all of that, and you're asking me, like, how come the Democrats didn't learn anything? 2016 was when I like had the, it's not that they don't learn anything, it's they don't give a shit. The people in charge of the party are laughing all the way to the bank and their corporate donors, the end. They don't care to learn because they're riding high on the hog. Nancy Pelosi knows damn well that the majority of country wants single payer health care. She knows damn well that the majority of this country wants a choice amendment or a choice statute or something. She knows this. So then when you know people know this and they still choose to not do it, or they want to recycle their 1990s politics and try to shove Pete Buttigieg down our throats, which won't work, nor will he have any chance of beating whoever the Republicans put up on that side. But when they recycle their old politics and they refuse to look at what's going on and see what's around them, it's intentional. They don't care. They're siphoning out as much power and money as they can until it collapses around them. And Nancy Pelosi and the ilk of the leadership of the Democratic Party, they demonstrate that not giving a shit every single day. You can put a statue of Bethune in Congress. You can kneel on the floor in a kente cloth, okay? We want health care, a living wage, and the right to unionize. This is the shit we want people to fight for. And all that other token stuff that the Democrats have become, people are sick and tired of that sanctimonious crap from them. They really are. And so when you ask what's progressive, what's a populist, well, they're going to find their populist message on the other side a whole hell of a lot less sanctimonious than the one on the Democrat side. That's why they voted for Trump. And they're going to fall into that again. They're going to do it again. We're watching them do it again. And it's extremely frustrating to me.
Would one of those bold populist moves, or I don't want to say gestures, but because gestures are usually hollow, but would one of those bold progressive populist moves, Article 3, Section 2, Congress shall regulate the courts. It was Congress's duty to create the Article 3 branch.
Correct.
The judicial branch is listed third among equals intentionally.
Correct.
The Federalist Papers tell us after the fact that that was intentional. Congress was listed first. Even as, three equals, I don't know why I just did that, I'm getting old. First among three equal branches. And even inside Article 1, it's the House that's listed first over the Senate. These things were done intentionally. Even though founders, framers said, yes, these are co-equal branches, but the House of Representatives, the People's House, is listed first. Then the Senate, then the Executive, then the Judicial. And Congress shall have the power to create, maintain, and regulate the courts. Is it time, again, to learn something from FDR? I would gladly see 15 high court justices. Is it time to change the court? And not pack it, by the way, but unpack it.
There's definitely something needs to be done. I am actually of the opinion now, and let me preface this with, I've been like a SCOTUS fangirl for most of my life. I remember, I remember when Sandra Day O'Connor being the first woman appointed and how excited I was, and then how disappointing that became. And all of I've followed this very attentively for most of my life. This is, to see where we have fallen in terms of the level of jurisprudence that our Supreme Court is, it's pathetic. People don't realize. So I was a huge fan of Thurgood Marshall. Thurgood Marshall is one of my biggest inspirations, my biggest heroes. He's the shit as far as I'm concerned. Really, this is someone who tried 32 cases before the Supreme Court, before being appointed to the Supreme Court, won all but 2 or 3 of them. You've got justices on the Supreme Court now that have never even tried a case.
Yep.
Okay, we've fallen very, very far. That being said, our judiciary is no longer what it once was. It's just not. It's become very politicized, but it's now also become not even remotely brilliant jurists. Even with people like Scalia, who I didn't agree with on a ton of stuff, but I would argue he was brilliant and definitely was qualified to be where he was. And now we don't even have that. So my thinking is, and I don't mind expanding the court. I would be open to that. I'm not averse to that, but I think we need to put term limits. I think they shouldn't be lifetime appointments. I think that, and I would make them be long, 10 or 12 years is your max.
That does require constitutional action. But that does require a constitutional amendment, which I think in this current climate is never going to happen. But Congress can create new federal districts,
right?
Therefore, opening new seats. And if they want to, with simple legislation, can change the structure of the court. It's been done 9 times in our history, if I'm not mistaken. I think I have that right. It might be 7, but it's been done multiple times in our country's history, and it can be done with simple legislation. It does not require constitutional change. Kathleen, who I'm happy to welcome back to the program, who's been away for a little while, in a similar question, Jen, if the House continued to grow as the population grew in the early stages of the country until it was capped at 435, if we had kept doing that, there would be roughly about 1,500 U.S. House representatives right now. What about that change? We always tend to look at the Supreme Court, and I'm guilty of that. I just said it. That was my first question to you. But isn't it time to increase the number of people in the House?
I'm one of those.
Which I believe they can do by their own. I think they can do by legislation as well. I don't think that's a constitutional thing.
No, it's not. It's not the number. There's no fixed number in the Constitution.
Because at the time that it was capped at 435, I believe each representative was somewhere in the 30,000 range, and now it's like 250,000 or something like that.
Yeah,
I could have that way.
Well, we're definitely not having quality representation.
Right. No. Right. Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
I am one of those people that is pretty much open to all sorts of ideas and suggestions. I find it ridiculous that people aren't that way. So my general approach to things like that, if you were a constituent and you were saying, to me, what do you think about that? I would start researching it. I would bring in people to talk to that were experts on this. And if it was something that I thought was the better way to go to get where we're trying to go, I would totally be on board. I'm pretty open to most suggestions. Again, it's really, what's your goal? Is your goal to have more people have justice and fair representation? And so to me, that's my goal. So I'm open to all sorts of suggestions.
Well, it seemed there was a big push here in PA. The Republicans were pushing this for a while. Again, I think it was one of those faux outrage, drive people to the polls sort of thing, where I think it was quite populist, to be honest. It was completely hollow and it was total BS, but it was one of those populist, white shirt, khaki pants, electric tiki torch from Lowe's sort of argument that Pennsylvania has the largest legislature in the country. It's also the most expensive one, and it's full time. Now, 2 weeks ago, they adjourned until September for the summer. They adjourned for the entire summer. I think they adjourned themselves on the 28th or something of June. and are not returning until I think September 15th. I think it is. Um, and Republicans were floating this for a while that it's time to cut the size of legislatures. It's just too big. There's too many of us here. Let's make government leaner. And I found a good number of my Democratic friends saying that's a great idea because they don't do anything anyway. And in addition to seeing it as a complete, fake, hollow argument, I tend to think of it as school, as education. Does the classroom with one teacher and 45 students get a better education, or the one with 15 students? So it would seem to me that if we're looking at better and more fair representation, and more balanced representation, it took till 2022 to get a black female on the court. It's increasing these things, not decreasing them, that's going to help us. I mean, look at the agencies. Did the complete neutering of the FCC and the Federal Election Commission, has that helped us at all? Has that helped anyone other than the rich? Expanding these, or at least looking at expanding these institutions, seems to me to be quite fair and quite in line. You get a better education when you have less students in the classroom. You get better representation when each rep is representing less people.
Right. I would even take it one step further, and what I say to people is we all do better when we all do better. And it's bizarre to me that people don't grasp that we're all better off with our neighbors and our communities being educated and having health care. And I actually just want to get back to something you said a while ago about well, if my neighbor's house is on fire and then it ends up reaching my house. And I don't know if you know this, but I learned this through my show and just interviewing people and meeting authors. But historically, before we had municipal fire departments were for-profit entities.
Yep.
Right? And so only rich people could afford.
It's the cause of the Great Chicago Fire. I have told the story of the Great Chicago Fire here before, but the Great Chicago Fire burned, I think, almost 2/3 of the city. The fire started literally a few buildings away from a firehouse. But that firehouse is not the one that was contracted with the building on fire. So they refused to go put the fire out and let it burn. And it then spread and burnt 2/3 of the city. After that, mayor and city council of the city of Chicago, not the right word, I'm missing the right word, I'm sure Jen will know the right word, for all intent and purpose, nationalized fire safety, fire prevention, and fire coverage in the city of Chicago, and said no more private, for-profit fire protection here in Chicago. You all now work for the city. You are direct employees of the city, and you will go where we send you, and you will go where the fire is, and then you will put it out. And that's the end of that. And it actually led to, it was the first drop in the water. A drop in the water makes ripples, and those ripples went out, and communities all across the country did the same thing because they watched the second largest city in the country burn. So that is what you are referring to. If I could snuck that story in there, but that's what you're referring to.
Yeah, it's as soon as people realize that it affects them, right? Mm-hmm. Then they care. So okay,
like
I don't
Rob Portman caring about same-sex marriage.
What about same-sex marriage?
Like Senator Rob Portman caring about same-sex marriage.
I don't know why anybody cares what other people do. I really don't.
Well, he was against it until his son came out and wanted to get married, and then now I don't have a problem with this anymore.
Yeah, that hypocrisy is disgusting.
Yeah,
it's disgusting. But I think that we just are all better off when we're all better off. And when I'm talking to people, it's like, a lot of the attitude I get when people hear about things like paying off student loan debt is, well, I had to pay mine. I had to wait for my Medicare. You have to wait for your healthcare, blah, 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 blah. And that mentality is how civilizations die. okay? Civilizations can live when we lift each other up and we want better for the next generation than what we have for ourselves. And we do not have a sense of collective in this country. And I think that's a
Well, it's been
huge
beaten
part of the
down since Reagan. I mean, FDR did this too with the creation of Social Security.
Well, we
retired folks before that's well, I never had a retirement. How come everybody else gets one?
Right.
And he basically told those folks, too bad, because no one else did it for you. I'm doing it for us going forward.
Right.
No one did it for you. Go talk to the people who were representing you at that time. They didn't have the stones to do it. I'm doing it. We have to rescue this economy. FDR didn't just save the United States from the Republican Great Depression. He saved it from what Jen has been talking about, the degradation and the deregulation of capitalism itself. Capitalism is built on greed. It is built on profit. And when one profit stream is exhausted, you have to find another. And they have found that we can profitize, not just privatize, words matter, we can profitize government. That's your money. What entity in this country brings in and cycles through more money than any other one? The federal government. And a small group of folks have said, we'll have that. That's ours. We'll have it. And too much of our government has been perfectly willing to give it to them. When it comes to pretty much everything that FDR did in the New Deal, there was a group of older folks behind it going, nobody ever did that for us, so how come they get it? Well, because it's worth having a policy change. That's why.
Yeah.
We were isolationists until World War I, and then we left our borders.
So I think that's progress. That's when you see progress, when people start coming on board with this idea of we're all doing better when we do better. And I think that something else that was a Kennedy thing, like the whole concept of Peace Corps and civil service is something that I'm very supportive of. I think the
moonshot was an effort of collectivism.
Yes.
We as a whole,
yeah.
We as a society are going to do this thing because it's hard, and because we're Americans, and because this is what we do.
Yeah. Yeah. I always say, to me, there's this huge difference between patriotism and nationalism. And lately they've been very conflated. And I find myself to be a very patriotic person in the sense that I would die for the principles that this country is based on, right? Like the idea that justice and liberty and freedom and the things that we're supposed to be about. But I wouldn't go die for what we are now as the United States of America in an imperialist, warmongering country that is just depleting resources around the world. That I'm not getting behind. But that to me doesn't mean I'm not a patriot. And I think that people have a different concept of what is countrymen. And to me, my countrymen are all the people around me. It's everybody sharing this land with me are my countrymen. And so their justice and their freedom matters to me because we're all in this together and none of us is getting out of here alive, people. So it's like, you just gotta look out for each other. It's just, it shouldn't be that difficult. And I have a friend who calls it Christ consciousness. You can call it whatever you want to, but I truly believe that that's the only strength we really have in this whole world is each other.
So
and everything else.
Why do you think that so many self-identified Republicans, especially the ones who literally don't have two dimes to rub together, continue to vote against their own self-interest? When did they somehow come to the realization that it's way more important that you don't have the ability to determine what happens to your own body over the fact that they have a mouthful of rotten teeth, can't feed themselves, and can't see a doctor, and their kids can't go to school? Like what? When I don't know when we crossed that.
Somewhere between Reagan and Clinton. I mean, basically you had Reagan and he did crush labor. And then you had Clinton come in and instead of fixing it, just continued the corporatization and privatization of everything. Not to mention, the Telecom Act, which that is a disaster you want to know why 6 companies own like 90% of our media? Like, he set in motion a lot of things that have really set us up to be screwed right now.
I would say it's the reason you and I do what we do, period. But it's also the reason why you and I do what we do in the forms that we do it.
Yeah.
Because there's not a TV station and barely a radio station left anywhere in the country that would hire you and I to do what we are doing right now.
Right. Well,
and God knows they don't have to.
Well, they only want, that's how, but look, Phil Donahue got fired because he spoke out against the war. They got rid of Ed Schultz because he wanted to cover Bernie Sanders. Like, the people that are on TV on mainstream media, those are not journalists. Those are talking heads. They get paid a lot of money to be stenographers of our government and toe the corporate line. And so it's a constant uphill battle to be fighting against that misinformation. And I do the best I can. But I think in general that people are starting to realize that it's a scam. Like that whole George Carlin thing is true. It's a big club and you ain't in it. And more people are realizing that.
So why do you think that
they go GOP?
No, well, yeah, but what I'm trying not to. I'm really trying hard. I swear to God, I am. It doesn't seem like it, but I really am. Trying not to be so terribly stereotypical here.
People vote against their own self-interest all the time.
Why do the folks in the Confederacy, and I continue to refer to it as the Confederacy, because I think what we're seeing is the Confederacy finally winning a war they never stopped fighting. And even though you are visiting North Carolina currently, I begin to how, especially during the Cold War, the Eastern Bloc countries would always be named something diametrically opposed to what they were. East Germany was the German Democratic Republic. It was anything of the sort.
Well, it's the People's Republic of China.
Right, the People's Republic of China. The North Korea, I think, is the. I think they do the same thing. People's Republic.
It's some ridiculous long title. Yeah.
You're in the People's Republic of Florida. In the Texas Democratic Republic as well. But especially that group really broke white folk specifically. They're not temporarily inconvenienced billionaires.
Right.
Like, they're not going to get in that club, just like you said, unless they hit the lottery. And I mean literally, unless they hit the lottery. They're not getting into that club. So I continue to struggle with, and look, I mean, you and I could probably do a year's worth of shows to go through this whole, and write a book about it and everything. And people have written books about it, but I continue to just be, while I accept it as a principle, I continue to be fascinated and dumbfounded at the same time about the fact that if Jen can't get an abortion, but I'm literally starving, I'm good.
Yeah.
Like, that mindset absolutely bloody fascinates me. I'm gobsmacked by it, but it also fascinates me. I happen to be a heterosexual male, okay? My girlfriend is downstairs making dinner because I can smell it. It really smells good. But were I not, and one of my dearest friends in the world is Christopher Kowardovich. He's been on this program 100 times. He's a veteran, a combat veteran, who is now actually the chair of the PA State Democratic Veterans Caucus. If Christopher and I were in love and wanted to get married, to have that Southern poor white lay his life down to make sure we could never get married, but the fact that all the teeth in your face are rotted, your kids can't go to school, we've got an increasing number of folks across the South who don't have running water anymore, and all of that. But for them to stop us from getting married, we're good with that. We're good. Yay us.
Yeah.
I'm gobsmacked by that. I continue to be. I cannot wrap my head around it sometimes.
I have a couple of different theories that I think are at play. I think, first of all, the people you're talking about are some of the most poor and totally disenfranchised and neglected parts of this country and some of those communities and the people that are really poor and desperate. And I think that when people are that poor and desperate, they're also really friggin' pissed and angry. And I think that when people are angry, it's very easy to fall into something like a Donald Trump is like a false prophet. I think that when you're angry about your lot in life and how shitty your life is, the most natural instinct in the world is to kick down, blame other people, whether it's the immigrants, it's the Mexicans, it's the Democrats, it's whatever it is. Like, they create so many villains, and these people are just so angry that they have nowhere else for their anger to go. And they see this as something that relates to them. And it's easier for them to blame other people than it is to acknowledge their own whatever choices they've made. So I'm broke, and it's got to be the immigrants, instead of them understanding that they're broke, but they need to punch up instead of kick down.
Is this the manifestation of the LBJ quote? And I'm going to butcher it. I'm going to butcher it, folks. If the poorest white man can be convinced that the richest black man is trying to take something from him, he's going to turn on the black man, and I can pick his pocket, not just secretively, but I can pick his pocket right in front of him.
Right. So I think it's that. Okay, so imagine we have that going on.
And I totally
right?
butchered that.
But no, I know, but it's true. But it's true. When somebody is desperate and poor and in a really bad way, they're going to also likely be angry and have a lot of resentment. Mm-hmm. If those people, it's not hard for them to then direct that towards the least of these instead of towards the people that are really responsible. And I think you take people that are that. So imagine, Rust Belt Joe, who hasn't worked, and he's pissed, and he probably has a drinking situation, and he just hates the whole fucking world and can't find a job and all this stuff, right?
Rust Belt Joe, who hates the government and hates takers from the government, but is probably living on disability.
Very well, that's fine. Right.
Keep your damn government hands off my Medicare.
Right. So then you have a guy like that. Okay. So imagine this guy, probably labor, not necessarily academically educated, right? And then you see the Democrats, okay? And let's be real, our modern Democrats are very, very academic, elitist, very sanctimonious, very holier than thou. And yes, people like Elizabeth Warren do come off that way. And I think that when they start talking about stuff like LGBTQ and all this stuff that a lot of people consider to be what I say over woke, people like Joe in the Rust Belt, they don't want any part of that bullshit, and they're going to tune you out because you're an academic elitist from the coastal cities, the blue coast, and they want no part of that crap. They don't want to hear your woke nonsense. They just don't. They don't care. So then they do look to somebody like a Trump who says, screw the snowflakes. And even though he's the world's biggest snowflake, but like, right. But you know what I'm saying? And I do see that people are so desperate and in a bad way right now that it isn't hard to see, which is why that when you have imploding sort of capitalism and more hungry and desperate people, they're either going to have a labor revolution or we're going to have a fascist takeover. These are the two choices. And this is, again, like that Marxist theory. Like, these are the two potential directions we're going in. And I feel like it's incumbent upon me to kind of try to steer us in the better of those directions.
Aren't we seeing exactly both of those things right now?
Yep.
I do need to do a program reset. I want to read a comment to you, but I want to just ask you before this leaves my brain.
Okay.
Aren't we exactly seeing both of those things right now?
Yep.
We are seeing a proper, open, in-your-face, yes, we believe in fascism and we're bringing it to you right now. Oh, but by the way, we're still going to take care of you. But we're also seeing the re-emergence of labor. You're seeing Starbucks become unionized. Amazon is becoming unionized. Costco's already unionized and has been the whole time. I don't know why they don't get enough credit for it. And not to say that they're perfect either, but they were always ahead of the curve.
Yeah.
And that's why I always go there instead of the other two. But we're kind of almost seeing both, are we not?
Yeah, we are. Well, look, back in 2016, I said to everybody I knew, they thought I was nuts. They were all sort of still thinking Hillary was the logical choice. And I said to them, we are in the middle of a populist uprising in this country. We're seeing it happen. I like it's happening. So your choice is either for that populist uprising to be on the left or to be on the right. And the way I looked at it is we offered them the compromise of the revolution. That was called Bernie Sanders. That was us trying to do it the nice way. I knew that Trump and having him would facilitate the revolution. And that's exactly what it's done. But you're right. What we're watching right now, that's why I was talking about the Marxist thing, because, and I'm not a Marxist, I'm not any ist. I'm just saying it's very fascinating.
Yes, you are. You're a populist.
I am a, but like my thought is it's so true. You're right. We are seeing it. And the concept is that as capitalism, it like basically engulfs us, it like we basically eat our own with capitalism, that the one of two systems is going to emerge from the dust of that. And we are seeing it in real time. And so I feel like my job is to explain to people that that centrist middle of the road is not an option on the table right now. We have to pick a team. And the only, because it's happening one way or the other. And whether or not we like it, it's happening. They've gone too far. Pigs get fat, hogs get slaughtered. And the oligarchs went too far and people are not having it.
I thought that the Trump election would do more to, again, not to beat the same terms and words over again, but I thought it would do more to wake people up.
Right.
And to scare people. And
it did.
Even the folks, even some self-identified Republicans, I thought it would scare them. I thought the totalitarianism of it and the sheer number of people willing to support it. And I don't just mean people, quote unquote, man on the street, but the government, Mike Flynn should scare the ever living daylights out of someone. This man devoted his entire life to the military, and has yet decided somehow that a totalitarian dictatorship is what's good for this country,
right,
and continues to work for it. So that kind of thing, I thought would scare more people. It's been disappointing. I do think it has awoken a lot of folks. I think that's why you're seeing the unionization efforts. I think it's I can draw that line, I believe. I can draw that line from Trumpism to the regrowth of unionization. That said, I'm surprised at how many people are still left on the side of that was the right thing to do. That Trump was the right thing to do. That's frightening to me. And that they still think it's the right thing. That they still think it's about the right thing to do.
Yeah, I think it's a smaller faction than you think, and I think also.
But if you look at the polls, though, of the number, again, from the People's Republic of Florida, your home state, the number of Republicans willing to support Ron DeSantis. I mean, this man's, he's not far away from a brown shirt. I mean, he's still wearing a suit, but he's not far away from a brown shirt.
I mean, I'm not a fan of his, but that's what we're looking at. And I've been trying to warn people, your next president is Ron DeSantis. But no, I think that a lot of people have woken up, but the reality is the Democrats aren't offering anything better. So a lot of people might come out of people are leaving both parties in droves, quite honestly. Like the numbers have been going up in terms of that. But the Democrats aren't offering anything else. All they have is, oh, look, Trump's scary. They're scary. And yes, they are. They are very scary. But it's even scarier that the people that have the possibility of fighting that are sitting there and doing nothing. So like, to me, I look like I'm trying to get them to put out their friggin' fire. That's what we're trying to do. It's like, wake up, people. They are the only hope. And yet they're just sitting there doing nothing. Blaming the parliamentarian or Kirsten Sinema or what other theatrical nonsense. They're not doing anything to help people.
I have to say, just on a personal note, folks, as a host in my own right, I am so taken aback and so humbled and in the shadow of Jen's ability to stare directly into the camera. Like I'm doing now. I have a terrible habit, because we're on Zoom right now. For those of you on the radio and just taking the audio, it just sounds like a radio program to you, and that's great. I mean, listen, we're thrilled that you're there. For the Facebook folks, there's a video component, and it's just a Zoom call, basically, we all know what they look like. And I have a habit that I simply cannot break unless I'm alone on the Zoom, and I'm the only one talking to you, the audience, where I can't stare at the camera. I always stare I look you in the face because I'm talking to you, so I tend to look, and of course it makes me look. Your ability to stare into the camera. I really wish I knew how to do that better. I'm very, very late for show reset. Wherever you are on Facebook, this is the Kenny Effect live for July 17, 2022. It is 6:44 Eastern Time. And whatever time it is for you anywhere around the world, across all of Facebook, thank you for being there. Thank you to every single individual, to every friend, family member that you share the program to. That's what we survive on. For every group and page, national or local or regional, thank you for allowing us to be part of your page, your group, your little corner slice of the Facebook universe. We thank you for being there. Please remember, if you ever miss any of our program live, you can go to our YouTube channel, which is also called That Other Side of Information. George does the video conversion after the program. It's usually up maybe by tomorrow, Tuesday, Wednesday at the latest. All of our episodes, every single one of them since day one of this program, youtube.com/That Other Side of Information. Hot101.net, website is the name, hot101.net, Apple App Store, Google Play Store, TuneIn, radio app. You can tell Alexa, I just blanked on the name Alexa. You can tell Alexa to play hot101.net and TCP. Tune into the morning show tomorrow. Not sure when I'm going to be driving to Lancaster to join them again, but I look forward to when I get the opportunity to do that. We thank you all for being there. Again, please feel free to share this program wherever you wish. Friends, family, other groups that you're in that I'm not in. Just wherever it's appropriate, wherever you feel that it's appropriate. If Crazy Uncle Larry at Thanksgiving needs a little truth and fact, feel free to share the program to him as well. Kathleen mentions, y'all aren't blaming Christo-fascism anywhere near enough. Is Christo-fascism, by the way, is a real thing? It's a big, long word with lots of letters and syllables, but it's something we can all, should be able to, hopefully, all wrap our heads around. Do you find that to be a movement in and of itself, or an offshoot of the greater sort of oligarchic, rich, taking everything out kind of movement? Or does it matter? Maybe it doesn't even matter.
No, I think it's a faction of people that are being used by people in power to keep fighting and keep us divided, the same way Trump sort of initiated the January 6th nonsense. It's a matter of those factions, your Christo-fascists or whatever the group you want to make up, it could be skinheads, it could be whatever group of hate-mongering nonsense that we're talking about that's out there, those are real. And those are a problem. And increasingly more of these men, I hate to say it, men are the problem in terms of and I don't want to sound like I'm one of those overwoke people, but the toxic masculinity is a serious problem here, people. I mean, these people that are mass shootings are men.
Other than Le Pen, other than Marine Le Pen in France, look at New Zealand. Look at the Nordic countries who all have female prime ministers now. Again, even though she was a bit controversial at times, and I don't think she was perfect either, Angela Merkel in Germany. Germany has now has yet again taken over Europe, and this time they didn't fire a shot. I mean, countries that are run by women are simply better run countries, period.
It's interesting,
Even First Minister Nicola Sturgeon in Scotland, even though Scotland is obviously not completely, I almost said divested, but that's not the right word. They call it the devolved governments, but which is an interesting way for the UK to put it, but they call it the devolved governments. Scotland is not devolved from England, but you get my point. Even Nicola Sturgeon in Scotland, these countries that are run by women are better. They're just simply better run. Period.
So I think that the Christo-fascists and those groups are definitely a huge problem. Do not get me wrong. Hate-filled people running in our streets trying to hurt other people is a problem. And I don't care what their mask is or what their hood is. It's a problem. But the bigger issue are the people at the top of the food chain that are kind of like manipulating that and using that and preying off of that That's the bigger issue. I feel like that's more of the head of the snake. Those groups are only as good as or as powerful as they're allowed to be. It's not like they have, they're not going to be able to really challenge the military. All right. That's what Waco was. Like, we've learned that. Like, these groups are only capable of going so far. But I think the biggest problem we have in terms of the violence and the crazy shootings and all that, I think we have a lot of very miserable, very mentally ill, unaddressed people that have grown up in an entire world of complete social and emotional retardation based on internet and social media. And I think that you have people that would have in 20, 30 years ago just been kind of socially awkward. Now they just never leave their house and they just sit there, and people are very disconnected. There is this huge friggin' disconnect. And I think that people in that kind of group back in the day, like I said, we would have said skinheads or whatever your group is, they're very susceptible to those kinds of messages. And when you get somebody like a Trump or a DeSantis, they know how to use that. And that's what we're seeing. So yeah, I do think those people are violent and scary, but I think that they're enabled more so based on people above them.
I hate to kind of bring this up because it makes it sound like a closing sort of argument, and I don't know that we have to go there yet unless you.
No, well, I do. I actually have to go.
Good.
I do have to go. So yeah.
Good. Then let me make a closing argument to you.
Yeah.
It seems to me that, and again, this is something I've told so many of my big D Democratic friends, and even some Republican friends who I think are disillusioned, but yet continue to pull the red lever for whatever reason. I believe we have to admit to ourselves. I hate to continue to use that. It's become a very you know this because you probably get it yourself. I'm sure people say to it yourself that, you have to realize. It makes it sound like the person I'm talking to is stupid and they don't know anything. So I kind of hate using that, but I seem to be falling into it because you hear it so much and it becomes a thing. But I do think that we collectively as a society has to realize, because I do believe this. I don't think this is conjecture. I believe it to be a fact, although it's kind of phrased as conjecture, I guess. We need to come to the realization that a very small percentage of people in this country, about the top 0.01% specifically, has decided, they've made a conscious decision, either individually or as a group, that small d democracy just isn't convenient anymore for profits. It just isn't. It is anathema to the constant hoarding of wealth. When the three richest people in the country, three richest individuals, not corporations, not groups of people, not investors, just three people, have the same wealth as the bottom 220 million. That's unsustainable. It's more money that they could spend in 10 lifetimes. That's why they buy themselves rockets and shoot themselves into space, because they've got nothing else to do. There's a story that circulated when Elon Musk first said he was going to buy Twitter, that he actually went in a very philanthropic way to the United Nations and said, how much money do you need to wipe out hunger? And they said $6 billion will do it.
Yeah. Never
did give that to them, did he? In fact,
no, he bought Twitter.
In fact, he wanted to try to buy Twitter for $44 billion. But my point is, so there's a small group of folks, it's not just those three people, but it's the folks around them, that has decided that small d democracy just isn't convenient anymore. And that the rest of us fall into a precious few categories. We are either workers, generating wealth for them in that manner, or consumers, generating wealth for them in that manner, or we should die and get out of the way. And that a Jeffersonian, Madisonian, constitutional, democratic republic just isn't convenient anymore for the psychopathy of hoarding that they have. Hoarding money, folks, is no different than hoarding newspapers.
Right.
The old guy at the end of the block, when you walk in his house, all the halls and everything is just stacks and stacks of newspapers or magazines, or the older woman at the other end of the block who has 82 cats. It's no different. It's hoarding. It's a psychopathy. So, Jen, do you agree? Do you disagree? And that's cool too. That group of people has just decided, you're right, freedom's not free. In fact, it's hurting profits. So if we have a dictator, as long as the money's rolling in, we're good because we can buy ourselves out of it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. They think that. And like I said, they hedge their bets. They support people on all different sides of the aisle. They get what they want. And there is definitely a small group of people that determine what we can have, how we can have it, how we can produce it, how we can ship it, and all these different things. And it's very scary that it's in the hands of such a small group of people. And yes, I do think democracy is very inconvenient for them. I would argue, while we're seeing it more and more, we're aware of it more and more, democracy's always been really inconvenient for them. The corruption and the filth has been around forever. I mean, the reason we even had Truman was because they screwed over Wallace from FDR. And, you know, I think about, if you haven't seen Oliver Stone, his documentary, it's quite amazing. It's like the untold history, or I forget. It's like
yes. It used to be on
it was on
Showtime,
Netflix.
I want to say. It might still, I'm sure you can find
It's
that one.
so good.
It's
but
the
basically
untold history of the United States.
Correct.
And it's from, I think it goes back to the founding. I think.
No. It's really weird. It starts, like the whole thing starts basically when they screwed over Henry Wallace, right?
Okay.
Like it opens with, this would have been the trajectory had Henry Wallace been there instead of Truman, which we know he wouldn't have dropped the bomb. Like there's a lot of things. Like, so it starts there. And then after, like,
Wallace actually was an advocate to expand what the new deal had done.
Yeah. Well, he wanted to finish it.
He wanted to finish it. Yep.
Yeah. So he starts there, but then it goes until present, and then there's this like an epilogue, and the epilogue actually occurs prior to Henry Wallace. Prior to, I guess that was the 42? Was it 42? Which year was it?
The 44 election was when the party insiders got
rid of Wallace.
They forced FDR to accept Truman.
Right.
It was the 1944 presidential election.
Right. That's where stuff started going askew. But
because it was 32, 36, 40. So the 44. So he died during the fourth term.
Yeah.
So
and he was already
election.
not in a good way, and that was part of why he lost his sort of pluck to fight harder for Wallace. But yeah, things really went bad from there. That was about the time when I think the powers that be decided, yeah, your little democracy experiment is costing us too much money, and we believe more in austerity. It's socialism for us, and you pull yourself up by your bootstraps and whatever. And it's just gotten progressively worse in terms of like electoral politics having any real power, because the real power we know is above that. The real power is in places like the military industrial complex or the fossil fuel industry or big agriculture, or that's the power. And they just have bought basically all three branches of our government at this point. So I feel like our democracy is sort of a facade, like we get to pretend, but I'm still trying to do the best with what we got. Like that's still all I got to work with. So, you know, that's why we're still fighting it.
It's the one thing that I continue to try to tell people, as hopeless as it might seem sometimes, and as much as it's, you know, when you're trying to scrape together a few bucks to pay the bills and you know that Jeff Bezos has $220 billion, at the end of the day, it's a small thing, Jen, I know, and it might be silly almost, you know, it really might be pot of gold rainbow kind of crap, but at the end of the day, when you walk into the voting booth, you still only have one vote each. I know he's got the billions. I get it. I'm not stupid yet. But at the end of the day, when you walk in the booth, you get one vote, he gets one vote.
He gets one vote, but he
can
also
buy a bunch of others. I get that.
Right.
I get
He
that,
gets
but
to control the legislative process. He gets
Right.
to make sure that his whatever Secretary of State of whatever state disenfranchises and gets 300,000 people off the voting rolls so that they can't vote. So like people like him control it where it's at the level even above the electoral process. So yeah, they get one vote once you're within the electoral process, but the amount of control they exert before that, that's the problem.
so before you go, and you've
Yeah.
been very kind. You told me originally you only had an hour, and I stole 2 from you.
That's okay, but I got it. I told my mom I would come for dinner, so I do have to go.
Just 2 last things.
Yeah.
One, give folks some hope. What gives you
All right.
hope? What gives you hope? What keeps you positive?
The progress that we've made so far. I look back on the past 3.5 years that I've been working with my business partner, Peter Hager. He's the one we did our congressional run together, like all of it. And the amount of people that have come up to me and thank us for just pushing forward, just doing this stuff. Like I'll have a really crappy day, and then I'll get a text like randomly from one of the kids. I call them kids. They're in their 20s really, but that worked on my campaign.
They're kids when they're younger than you.
Right there. Anybody who's young enough to be my kid is a kid. So I get a text from one of them, and it's just, I just want you to know I was thinking about how much you've helped me, and I'm very thankful for what you and Peter have done, and just that's the kind of stuff, because the young people are noticing, and the young people are angry, rightfully so, and that's what inspires me the most, are the young people that come out for these things. And I think they're a lot smarter than older people give them credit for. But I do feel inspired, but I'm not necessarily hopeful that this will be without violence. I myself am a nonviolent person. I am not a proponent of violence, but as someone who has studied history, I have not heard of the nonviolent revolution.
Right.
And so unfortunately, it's going to get worse, I think, before it gets better. But I do believe there are more of us that want to help each other be better than want to keep people down. And ultimately, we're just trying to coalesce those people.
What is the Kennedy quote that, those who make peaceful revolution impossible make violent revolution inevitable? I probably butchered that a bit, but it's, yeah.
No, it's true. I'm scared that that's where we are. But like I said, I'm not a proponent of violence, but you can't be the largest arms dealer in the world and think you're going to be able to have gun control at home. That's ludicrous. So the people that think, and again, I am supportive of all sorts of regulations. We don't need to go off on the gun control tangent, but I just think in a grand scheme of things, to think that the country that makes the most weapons in the whole world is going to be able
possesses the most.
Right.
We have 4% of the population and 28-ish% of the privately held firearms.
Right. And how would you stop it? We produce them. So even if you were trying to keep them out of the hands of regular people, all you're going to get is a black market because we produce the most of them. I think it's important. My job is to point out to people that there are things we can do. I think local community work is so important. And I've seen a lot of progress locally that I've helped work with. And so that is also something that inspires. I recommend people to get involved locally because you much more often will see the fruits of your labor locally than you will politically.
Right.
And that's what I do. I think between local community activism and getting the young people out, that I do feel hopeful. It's scary, but I'm hopeful.
Last thing. I do this with every single guest. I have bad news for you.
Okay.
You are part of our family now. Bad news. So
does that mean I'm a Kennedy? Do I get to say I'm a Kennedy?
You are part of the Kennedy effect family at the very minimum.
Okay.
And I suspect that is quite a minimum. For our little homegrown effort here, because as I told you, I have zero advertising, as you can tell. I didn't read a single ad. I make zero money.
Right.
I do this because I think it's necessary. I think truth. There's still a place for truth somewhere on this planet, and certainly somewhere in this country, anyway. But what I wanted to say, of course, is 1,000 times over, thank you, and I mean that truly. I really do. It's 2 hours a lot of time take out of your Sunday when you're trying to go have dinner with mom and so on. What I want to do though is turn the floor over to you, and just if there's anything that you wanted to share, how do we find your program? How do people find you? And if there's any answers that you didn't, any thoughts or answers or something that you didn't get completely out of your brain or somewhere that we didn't get to go, I mean, I just want to give you a few minutes to just have at it.
Okay. I mean, all I really want to do is just keep building a bigger and bigger coalition. And that's why I do shows like this. I'll talk to anyone, anywhere, anytime, if it means I'll get exposed to a bigger audience and people I wouldn't normally get exposed to, because I see it like a spider web and I'm just trying to build a bigger and bigger web.
I do the same thing.
So I'm always
I always make the joke, I don't want to be the proverbial tree in the forest. I can do this all I want, but if nobody's listening, what's the point?
Right. And I try to build a bigger coalition. Mm-hmm. So I have a podcast. It's called JENerational Change with a J. JENerationalChange.com is our website. Our YouTube show is JENerational Change. So it's YouTube/JENerational Change. And people can follow me on Twitter we changed it. So it's at GenChangeFL for Florida. So that's how people can follow and see what we're up to. All the money that comes into our podcast and from our Patreon is all used for, we have a 501c4, which we couldn't do a 3 because we do political stuff. We support nonprofit or non-corporate candidates, but we do homeless care packs, all of the things that we did as a campaign, we kept going. And so GenCore is our organization, and all the stuff that we get goes to stuff like that. And yes, we do also donate to non-corporate candidates. Like, we're sort of like a mutual fund, if you will, for people that have progressive values. Like, we donate to local, anything from a new community garden to, I just bought all these little hygiene packs that I give out every time I stop and there's somebody that needs something, like just different things that we do. And that's what we do with our money. We just try to spread it. We're just trying to spread goodwill.
I desperately implore you, ask you, beg you, please let this not be the only time that we hear from you. Please
me? Oh, you can invite me back. You can invite me back for sure.
Please come back and see us again. I feel like as much as we covered in 2 hours, I feel like you and I could sit here a really, really long time.
Yeah.
And just go through an awful lot of things.
Yeah. We'll do it again.
Well, please come back and see us. I say it to every guest, but I say it because I mean it.
Yeah.
I do consider every guest that we've had on here just to that we've built a family here, and I started this out of a genuine need. We're the only live progressive media in Pennsylvania, period. And there's not a state in the union that should be blue more than Pennsylvania.
Right.
And yet we're not. So
go Fetterman.
Somebody needs to learn something. Yes, exactly. Somebody needs to learn something. If you're not following him on social media, you should be.
Well, I'm not personally on social media. That's my partner, Peter, that handles it, because the people are just too mean for me. And I honestly, as long as I have a partner that's willing to parse through that shit, I don't need that negative, toxic crap in my headspace.
Well,
I just don't.
If he can pull out the Fetterman stuff for you.
Oh, he follows Fetterman. He follows.
Yeah.
We're big supporters.
It's funny. It's some of it.
He's definitely trolling Dr. Oz in a fun way, for sure.
It is. Yeah, because it's not offensive.
No, it's glorious. I think it's hilarious.
It's not belittling even. It's just sarcastic.
He's toying with him. It's hilarious.
And you know what, Jen? It's working.
Of course it is.
Working. There is a growing number of Republicans. Look, there's always going to be a lot of Republicans that are going to pull the lever. Satan himself could run as a Republican. They'll vote for him.
Yeah.
Evangelicals will vote for him. That said, he's turning Oz a tiny bit into a joke.
Good.
Into somebody to point at and laugh at. He flew a banner over the Jersey Shore.
I saw that.
So you saw that one?
I saw it. Welcome home.
Right.
Welcome home, Dr. Oz.
There's another one, though, that he just did. I don't know if it's his team doing it, but if you hear John speak, and I have a number of times, he might actually be doing this himself.
Yeah.
But there's a picture of Oz at the two real touristy cheesesteak places in Philadelphia. They're right on a corner.
Right.
They face each other on this odd sort of angled corner. And he went to both of them. And Fetterman, put up, good to see you doing what any tourist would do in Philadelphia.
Exactly. Welcome.
Jeez, that's just, That's
Oh,
great
it's
stuff.
great.
Anyway, I know you have
All right.
to go.
Thank
I'm
you
so
so
grateful.
much.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Please come back.
Will do.
And see us again. I really ask you to please do that. And
I will.
Please keep tabs on us. Join the show. Spread the good word. And thank you for this new friendship. And I look forward to seeing you again.
Absolutely. Thanks, Jeff.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
That's Jen Perelman. And check out her. I will try to find a link if I can. I'll put the name of the show in the comments. But I will, if I could find an actual link to put in, I'll do that. I don't know that I will be able to do that on the fly, because usually when I start typing, folks, I don't talk much. Whoops, I did the wrong thing there. Sorry, I'm trying to put the phone number up for you, and I'm failing at it quite terribly. Yes, if I can put the name of it in, and I will do that as soon as I can. It gets a little dicey now when I'm on my own, because then when I start typing, and I'm a little older, kids, and I can only walk and chew gum so much at the same time before I get a cramp and I break out in sweat and I get sick. All this fun stuff. I have put the phone number up on the screen. You should see it shortly. And I will open the phone line. The phone software is still not working, but I can do the old, whoops, almost dropped my own phone. I can do the old hold the phone up to the mic thing and everybody will hear you. 267-227-9189, 267-227-9189. We'll try to go to 7:30 at least. I always like to end on a half hour. I don't like to end like in the middle of an hour like that. So I hope you enjoyed that. I've been trying to get Jen on for a while, and it really was it really was, oh, I did it wrong. I hit the wrong thing. Oh, goodness. Because now I'm trying to type and talk to you, and I'm getting all befuddled here. So, yeah, this is all going sideways. I've actually tried to get Jen on for quite a while. When she was running for the U.S. House against Debbie Wasserman Schultz, which I just thought was gutsy. I mean, properly gutsy. And I tried to get her on going way back to that, and we just didn't connect. And then her show popped up in my Facebook feed. She may not be directly on Facebook. Her partner handles it, but of course he posted the show as he should. That's how you get people to watch. And I just heard her have a proper go at the Democratic Party after the Roe overturn, and I thought, you know what, I'm going to try and get to her again. And thankfully, she was kind enough to come on, and that was an extremely pleasant conversation. I kind of thought when we got into the differences between how we look at our own party and how to fix things, that it might get contentious and yet not. And I think that's a really good thing, by the way. We should be able to still talk to each other with a smile and with respect, and hug it out at the end, even when we don't agree on things. So that was awesome. I'm very happy with that. I thought, by the way, folks, that it was going to be a really, really short show, because I don't feel great. I really don't. Kristen doesn't feel well. That's why she's not up here. I don't feel well. I thought Jen was supposed to come on for an hour, and I was probably going to say goodbye to you right after she was done. But, we did 2 hours instead, and I do think that's one of the strengths of our program, come to think of it, though, is that we can do long form. We get a longer time to talk to folks. We get into issues and policies and ideas and ideals and principles on a deeper level, and I appreciate that about our program, and I hope that you do too. The phone line is open, 267-227-9189, 267-227-9189. About 15 more minutes or so, and then I will say goodnight to you, especially if nobody rings me. 267-227-9189, 227-9189. I think Randall must be on a phone boycott. I don't know what to say. I had one steady caller. ticked him off. I guess I ticked him off. He could be having dinner with the family. I'm busting on him for no good reason. We're friends though. He'll get it. He'll get a chuckle out of it. But I'm picking on him for no good reason. Let me it smells like something's burning. Let me get a couple things, or take you through a couple things in lieu of someone calling. And I do hope somebody will in the next 15 minutes. Let me take you through a couple of things that I put up on the group page, and I would ask you to please. Oop, there's one. Hang on, hold on. We got to do it with the phone. We got to do it. We got that. We got that. And we got that. Welcome, caller 610, I believe it is. Tell us your first name and where you're calling from.
My name's Kat, and I'm calling from Lackawanna County.
And I can hear myself in the background, so whatever else that is, can we kill that?
Yeah.
Yeah, hear that delay? That's
Hold
brutal.
on.
Beautiful. Go ahead, Kathleen, have at it.
So I think that one of the biggest issues that the Democrats keep feeding to Republicans is we're letting them dictate their own sort of culture war ideas. And in the meantime, a lot of Democrats, more centrist Democrats, are throwing the less convenient minorities that make up the intersectional politics of the Democratic Party completely under the bus. You know, we see that happening with, transgender individuals and that kind of stuff. And people, I've heard Democratic politicians say, like, we should back off of those things because they're too contentious and this and that, But you have these things coming out called, like the Don't Say Gay bill, which these are the kinds of grassroots, things that the Republicans have been winning at for a long time when it comes to dominating our educational system and our local and state governments. And I think by ceding a lot of the more, divisive issues, you're actually, I think that you're actually decreasing turnout among a lot of younger voters who tend to vote Democrat.
All right, let's unpack a couple of those things.
Yeah.
I would tend to agree that the Democratic Party, unfortunately, does cede, as you said it, I think that's probably the best word for it, a lot of territory on a lot of different things. I would say the places that we do it to are places that we can take back. It is not unpatriotic to criticize your country. The American flag is not solely a Republican symbol. The military is not solely a Republican organization. In fact, it is the most socialist organization on the planet.
Yep. I was in the military, so I can totally vouch for that. TRICARE is amazing healthcare.
It's the most integrated, it's the most socialistic, largest, by dollar, of course, socialistic endeavor on the planet. We spend more in the military than the next, dozen countries. I think most people know that. We also spend more in the military than most individuals' gross domestic products on Earth, and I'm talking about some rather large countries. At 850, I think we're up to $850 billion now. Senator Sanders would tell you the real dollars of that are more like in the 1.3 trillion mark. So I would agree with you on that. That said, what about if I just play devil's advocate? Because I'm not necessarily disagreeing with you. I think there might be a slight, semantic kind of disagreement, but I'm not disagreeing. Certainly not being disagreeable. What about the idea that when those Democrats say to you, let's not argue about these things, what be they, gay and trans rights or even abortion at this point. But if we take the tact of arguing it from a personal freedom point of view, that the abortion debate is not about abortion. It's about the fact that government is literally deciding what 55% of the population can do with itself. Do you take any stock in that? Does that mean anything to you? Does that say anything to you? Or do you consider that to be part of the we're just giving ground?
I mean, I would argue that it doesn't really matter to a lot of people whether it's libertarian or not, because the majority of anti-abortion advocates are coming at it from a moralistic or religious standpoint. So that kind of political rhetoric isn't going to at all move the dial on anti-abortion rhetoric at this point, in my view. And having grown up in a situation where, my stepdad's father was like a pretty right-wing preacher, and I was raised in a lot of fundamentalist Christianity, I can tell you that dial ain't moving, because and again, that's why I think that Christo-fascism is like such a real issue, because it drives so much more of our politics than people give it credit for. I don't think you can logic your way into getting people to agree with a pro-choice argument whatsoever.
But isn't isn't stripping away personal freedom an emotional argument and not a logical argument? It is a logical, find the right word. It's a logical extension of government, and by the way, legislating through the courts, which is supposedly something Republicans hate until it benefits them. And this legislating from the courts and the stripping away of a personal liberty. And I think I know what one of your answers is going to say, that they don't believe that abortion is a personal liberty. But my point is that the idea that not government really, the Supreme Court for the first time in its history has removed a right from someone, and has, well, more than someone, again, over half the population. Those were but those were reaffirming that a group of people did not have rights. And it's a little bit of a parsing. I understand exactly what you're saying. Lincoln did not end slavery, and then the Supreme Court reaffirmed it, would be my greater point. And that's an oversimplification of the point. But this is the first time that a segment of the population, and not even a segment, the majority at this point, had a right and then had it taken back from them. I do think that there is, as I mentioned to Jen during the program, or when she was here with us, because we're still on the program, that this is an argument that is actually making sense and hitting home to folks who are consistent Republican voters. A majority of Republicans polled, I think it was in the 54, 56% range, which isn't an overwhelming majority, but is still a majority, did not favor this decision. Which is why if we remove it, if we take a step back from it, as not an abortion argument, or not a gay marriage argument, but a personal liberty argument, which is also the same argument that they use for carrying every type of weapon imaginable on themselves openly in public, that we do make some ground there. And I would add, at some point, if we take everything that you just said as complete 100%, that's the way it's going to be forever and ever, and that we cannot reach these people at all, at what point do we stop bothering?
I don't think that we can't reach these people at all. I think that, though, we have to come at it from a younger generation, and we really have to fight a lot of these educational policies, because that is why they're doing it. It's because, a lot of these people, the boomer generation, even Gen Xers who are, sort of set in their political ways, there is far too much, pride and, the lack of being able to, actually have the humility to back down and say that they were necessarily wrong in their previous views. I mean, I just don't see that being a significant kind of social change that we'll see in America. Americans are far too individualistic and far too stubborn when it comes to those kinds of beliefs, and far too, I would argue, almost like cultist in a way, in the way that, micro parties sort of form. I mean, on the Democratic side, you have like the intersectionality of feminism and anti-racism and LGBTQ rights and, a number of other things. On the right, though, I mean, sure, you might have these Republicans that aren't on board with the ban on abortion, but they're not the single-issue abortion voters. And those single-issue abortion voters are happier than they've been in 50 years. And the ones that aren't happy with it aren't so unhappy that they're going to change their political affiliation, in my view.
So let me ask you then this. Let me take what I hope is another logical question, especially in your area, because I know where you are. I know where you are. Do you think the dog caught the car on specifically an abortion issue? I can recall, again, I mentioned it when Jen was here. Kristen and I went to a Bands Off Our Bodies rally the day that the formal, not the leaked, but the formal announcement finally came from the court, from the Republican court. And it was very well attended for something that was arranged literally in a matter of hours. There was not one single counter protester. Not one. Not a single one. So do you think the dogs caught the car?
I mean, when it comes to abortion, maybe, but that's why they're totally pivoting to the Don't Say Gay bills and critical race theory, because they're just going to move on to the next thing that the next group of single-issue voters have a hard-on about. Like, the abortion, the anti-abortion crowd got what they wanted at this point, and now at the state level, those people will be subsumed with trying to, create Gilead from The Handmaid's Tale as accurately as possible on the state level, and meanwhile, national politics can move on to the next, single-issue voter issue for the Republicans for the week.
Well, as I intend currently to close this out in about 5 minutes, I'll ask you the same question that I asked Jen. What gives you hope?
Honestly, what gives me hope is
do you have any?
Generations coming up. Like, I think that because of the wealth disparities between different generations, that you basically see a lot of young people. I mean, when it comes to Gen Z, about 20% identify as LGBTQ plus. I mean, that is pretty significant.
It is.
And the Republicans are really not, playing the long game on that one. They made an attempt at Milo Yiannopoulos, but now he's like a reformed Orthodox Christian, I was gay but they cured me type. So it didn't end up working out well for them. Never mind his apologia for pedophilia in the church. But when it comes to a lot of these issues, it seems like we're so much more willing to back down on them, at least at the higher echelons of government. I think a lot of it also has to do with the fact that how old is Nancy Pelosi? How old is Joe Biden? Who are the young people, like, besides AOC and a few of the other squad, who really do we have in Democratic leadership that is going to take the reins when these octogenarians, pull a Ruth Bader Ginsburg?
Well, I still maintain, I don't know if this cycle will prove it out, but I think the next Democratic Speaker of the House is Perelman. If you look at who did the majority of the negotiation direct with the White House on CARES Act, Build Back Better, even though it didn't pass, the infrastructure bill, the child tax credit, it was Pramila Jayapal, not the speaker. And I think she will be speaker at some point. I don't know if it's going to be in January of 2023, but I do think she's well positioned and well placed to be speaker at some point. And that I find hopeful.
Like, and I guess I find a lot of hope from taking part in a lot of the younger leftist content that is online with Twitch streamers and stuff, because there are extremely popular shows like Hasanabi or Bosch that give like very left-wing takes and are much just as successful as a lot of the right-wingers. Left-wing politics might not be able to take back radio, but I do think that we have taken over political streaming online. So that's where I find some hope, is that, eventually, once the older generations die off, I think we're going to have a much, better, spread of things. But I think part of the reason that we don't have a good spread now is because the older generations aren't willing to fight for the younger generations. I mean, look at Joe Biden and student loan debt. I mean, the Republicans are more than willing to give a $1.4 trillion tax cut to their constituents. But when it comes to student debt relief, which would do far more to invigorate the economy, it's, nada. And I think that really does make a lot of younger people, I would say probably 35 and under, feel unheard. And I think that the more I see some of these issues being pushed more to the forefront, even if it does create more culture war like skirmishes in the short term and more Ben Shapiro and Steven Crowder bait, that overall I think that it's a net positive and they need to keep doing that more. None of that kente cloth kneeling on the floor of the Congress kind of stuff, but actually, engaging with the young Democrats or young potential Democrats that feel like they can't even identify with the party because they're too far left to even feel that the Democrats can speak to them.
Are you?
That's where I find hope.
Was that a quiet way of making fun of me about I'm so old that I'm not on Twitch?
Oh, no, not at all. Twitch can be an absolute cesspool, and if you don't know the culture of it, it can be a little intimidating. But I will say, Sam Cedars on Twitch, and there's a number of other Gen Xers and even boomers that have Twitch channels now. So, it seems to be, reaching. I mean, Robert Reich is doing YouTube shorts and stuff now, and if Robert Reich can figure this stuff out, I feel like anybody can.
And those little YouTube videos that he does are quite informative. They actually really are, and they're not terribly long. I think some of the longest ones are in the 10-12 minute range. Some of them are as little as 3 minutes. If you don't check out or don't know, the former Secretary of Labor and economist, Harvard professor Robert Reich, has been, for someone who was such a prominent member of the Clinton administration, he has become, or maybe he always was, and maybe he just, wasn't allowed to.
The Clinton administration from being a little too left leaning.
He's become even more so, and he's a.
Oh yeah. He's like my boomer spirit animal, if I'm going to be completely honest. He's one of my favorites. His documentary, Inequality for All, was something I watched when I was in my mid-20s, and it really influenced me a lot. And I've read almost all of his books, and I still listen to his podcasts. And I think that he's a great voice. I mean, I think Sam Cedar is actually a great voice for the left, and he does some really good programming. But, and there seems to be a lot more of this interactivity between different leftists in the online space. And I think that has a better chance of us. We have a much better chance of dominating the online space than right wingers do. Like, just because they have 4chan doesn't mean that they get to own the internet. Like, trust me, I've been to 4chan. It's not that impressive.
Well, it's a little inside baseball, and I think I've spoken to you folks, my dear friends and my dear audience, about this before, but even though I have no advertising on the program and I don't bring in any money from it, there is cost involved in all of this. And one of the things that George and I were able to find out early on is that when you do a DuckDuckGo search for software to send your program to, or send your stream to multiple places at the same time, you are bombarded with a host of quote-unquote free software. And you're like, great, this is awesome, this one looks great, let's try this. Oh, this one will let you broadcast live to Facebook and YouTube and Twitch and everything all at the same time. Oh, it's great, awesome, good, let's do that. And then George would download it. It's like, before we count on it, let me download it, have a look. And George was awesome doing all that. I mean, we went through scores of programs between video streaming and multi-platform and phone software, which I guess we're going to have to continue to find a new phone software because this one still isn't. I still can't fix this one. But it was interesting. So we found one of these really great programs. It looked brilliant. I mean, it was fantastic. And it looked great. And it was going to one button push and we would automatically be on all these platforms and went. And we thought it was all free, and we actually did a test program. You can't find it anymore because we deleted it because it was dreadful. But we did, and then we found out that you can do all of this just for for that one. I think was, oh gosh, I want to say it was like $79.99 a month or something. I'm like, I don't have $80 a month to go to all these. And then we got a little deeper.
I just put 2 links in the chat too.
Well, we tried one of them. One of the ones.
Free,
OBS.
Streamlabs and OBS project, yeah.
Streamlabs was not, because we tried it. And OBS, I don't believe was either, because I think we tried that one early on too. Both of these are familiar to me. We could revisit them, but I know George and I tried OBS, and that's what OBS did to us. We couldn't do everything at the same time. We got to pay. And Streamlabs, I want to say that we tried that one. It looks very familiar. We could revisit it, because I do think. And didn't you promise me some time back that you were going to play blocking? In an American football sense, that you were going to play block or goalie, maybe even better analogy. If I went on Twitch, because I'm gonna get my head handed to me for being an old white Irish guy. I'm gonna get trolled like crazy.
Well, and that's the thing is you gotta have a couple millennials to be your moderators in your Twitch stream. Yeah.
But that would be, lovely. I would love to be able to push.
My friends to do it.
I would love to be able to push one button on this Zoom and go to everything at one time. It would be a lovely, lovely thing. I do know I understand, I continue to understand the power of Twitch. I just don't want to, I don't think I have the temperament to get get trolled for having white hair and wearing Manchester United shirts and things like that, instead of the meat of what we're talking about. But that's perhaps a different topic for a different day. But thank you, Kathleen, for giving me a ring. I appreciate it. I think I'm gonna go eat. I think I'm gonna go eat dinner because I think I smell it burning. Kristen's probably really ticked off because I told her it was gonna be a short show, and it has not been. Before I came up, she said, "You're not going at 8 o'clock, are you?" I'm like, "Absolutely not." I'm like, Jen's leaving in an hour, and I don't feel well, and here it is, coming up on 7:45. Anyway, thank you. I appreciate you. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. Here's the plan, folks, because I really do and should wrap up. I honestly wasn't planning on going this late. I truly wasn't, because I don't feel great. And Kristen made dinner, and I fear that she burnt it. Obviously, she burnt mine, and I deserve it, because I told her I was going to be done in about an hour, hour and a half, and here it is, coming up on 3 hours. Let me tell you what's coming up on the program, coming up in the future. I had told you last week that I had expected that we would be doing a straight run of shows from last 2 weeks, all the way straight through to Labor Day. Everything in this world is subject to change, and it looks like there's going to be a change. I do not believe that we are going to be with you next week. I'm not 100% on that. But it's certainly looking that way. There's a large rally meeting, collaboration of different groups with a number of friends and guests, folks that have been guests on the program, happening in Philadelphia next week, next Sunday. And it's noon to, the event is scheduled for noon to 3. But that would be a mad dash scramble for Kristen and I to get back from Philly, to get back to be on the air with you. So Kristen says she did not burn dinner. She's proofing the skillet. Now there's a woman who knows how to cook. She's got genuine cooking skills. When you're proofing a skillet. My cooking is ramens, spam, scrapple, rice, and whatever I can put in the microwave. But she's proofing the skillet. She's a much better person than me. What she sees in me, I haven't got a clue. I couldn't get luckier. No idea what the woman sees in me at all. That said, let me get back to the schedule. So I don't believe that we're going to be with you next week. I believe we'll be in Philadelphia. Still hoping I'll get a chance to speak at this rally. I don't think it's going to happen. But I hate going to rallies when I can't speak. My ego is so enormous, and I trust my speaking skills to such a point that I get bothered when I go to public things and I don't get a chance to speak. It is childish of me to feel that way. Make no mistake. It is absolutely childish of me to feel that way. It is the kid, in the grocery basket at the checkout who demands gum and kicks and screams till he gets it. I get a little bit that way. I really do. I'm not proud of it, but it is what it is. But anyway, I think it looks very, very much like we will be in Philadelphia next week. So I do not think that we will be with you. But please stick with the group. Stick with our Facebook group, That Other Side of Information, and we will let you know. You know where the show announcements are. So just stay in the group, and you'll find out what we're up to. But I'm pretty sure we're going to be in Philly next Sunday. What else is happening? I felt like there was a bunch of stuff I needed to tell you that I really wanted to get out in the program, and I've lost it. My mind's going blank. I apologize. Oh, one thing I would say. I'll keep the phone line open in case anyone else rings. And if not, that's fine. It's not fine. I love taking calls. But, the phone line is still open. 267-227-9189. 267-227-9189. 267-227-9189. I tripped over my own voice. Couple of things not political, so to speak, that I would greatly like to put out there just as something different. Posted quite a number of articles this past week on the Facebook group Environmental in Nature. No pun intended. Couple of things. There are wildfires running all across Europe, Western Europe, right now, because they are experiencing a drought and record-setting heat. Past few days, I have not looked on the Weather Channel, which I could do, and probably should have done. For the first time in their history, the UK advised, or published, I should say, literally a red alert environmental warning. Temperatures in London were expected to be over 100 degrees, and in fact did get over 100 degrees Fahrenheit. Spain has seen, when I saw the report on CNN yesterday, it was 80 plus deaths from heat stroke and heat exhaustion. Spain, which is not exactly a cold climate, that they're not used to heat, but there are wildfires in Portugal, Italy, France. The heat in Germany was sending people to the north coast for people to go to the beaches to seek relief. There are mountains near the Arctic Circle that have no snow or ice on them whatsoever. And you might think to yourself, well, it's July. Should they? In the Arctic, yes. So there's a group of articles that I posted about that. Please have a look. These are important posts, mile markers that we are hitting in the deformation, the transition of the planet. Man-made deformations and transformations of our environment. I would ask you to check out those articles about that. Also posted a couple of articles about the James Webb Telescope and some of the pictures, the first pictures that have come from the Webb Telescope, and they are absolutely just mind-blowing. You never felt so small and insignificant when you see a photo of a slice of the sky as small as a grain of sand, and finding galaxies that had formed not too long after the Big Bang itself. And we don't really see this much from the ground, or just going out in our backyards, or even a home telescope. But all those points of light in the Webb Deep Field photo, they're not stars, they're galaxies. The average number of stars in a galaxy, and it's an average, is in the neighborhood of 400 billion stars. 400 billion. And that's an average. The Milky Way is in that average. Astronomers believe there are as many galaxies in the universe, in the known universe, as there are stars in our home galaxy. Astronomers also believe, as well as biological astronomers, I didn't use the right word for that, astrobiology, and astrophysicists, all believe that a minimum, everything that they have studied so far shows that a minimum of half of all the stars they can find have planets. So I'm not necessarily going down the alien road here. I'm simply saying The math is inescapable. We are not the only life in this universe by far. In fact, I personally don't believe we're the only life in this galaxy. I'm not even sure we're the only life in this solar system. But we sure as hell aren't the only life in this universe. Especially when you're looking at galaxies that are 13 billion years old. How far advanced some of these civilizations have been compared to ours. How many civilizations like ours have come and gone in this universe, or even just this galaxy? It really does boggle the mind. It really is a lot to take in. But I ask you, that's in the group as well. And I think the last thing I'll bring up that I posted on my own personal timeline, a lot of, and a couple, and some of it on that other side of information, are some videos and articles about animals, specifically domesticated dogs and cats. Animals that have, I think I put up a video of a montage of animals being adopted from shelters on the videos of them on their adoption day. There's an article about the amount of livestock that is dying across Europe in this heat, in this drought. Some articles about there was a group in Indonesia, a group of just regular citizens with the help of some conservationists that saved 2 elephants from, they fell into a man-made hole at the side of the road. It was part of road construction. And the baby elephant had fallen in. The mother tried to go in to get it, and then she fell in, and neither of them could get out. They sedated her, they brought her a crane, they stayed with her till she woke up, and then they helped wash her off in the rainstorm, and then watched her go back into the forest. These are, they're not meaningless stories, and I was going to say that they're small stories, and they're not small in that point of view, but they are. I try to post stories that are hopeful. Jen and I talked about it. Kathleen, when she was kind enough to call, we talked about it. It's very easy to get dark and get down and get hopeless. And every now and then we just need to find a little something to get some perspective and get some hope, really. Get some good news. And perhaps articles like that help you. I know they help me. I've also been posting most weeks from The Guardian, the This Week in Lifetime, or This Week in Wildlife photos is what I meant to say. This Week in Wildlife photos. I find those fascinating as well. In addition to the fact that they're stunning and beautiful photos, I find them hopeful as well. That as we squabble about these seemingly solitary human issues, so many of them self-created. And when you just see a photo of a mother monkey somewhere in India taking care of its offspring, they're humbling, I think, in a way. They're humbling stories, they're humbling photos. And I hope you'll check that stuff out in the group as well. I think that probably does it for us. I genuinely cannot think of anything else to tell you. As I was going through, I was trying to get to the group. Ridiculous that I do this. I think I'm going to do it seamlessly. You'll be noticing, I'm sure, in the group, that other side of information, of course, our home group, post a lot of the op-eds from Tom Hartman. A story about how Joe Manchin is destroying more of the Democratic agenda. Again, and the very, very simple reason he's doing it is because it's not profitable for him. The Democratic agenda is simply not profitable for him. Oh, there's the cat. You can probably hear him. He's not happy. He wants me to shut up, come downstairs. Let me see. There's some, I posted an article. It's a European article, again, from The Guardian in the UK, about how to spot signs of heat exhaustion in your furry family members, your dogs and cats, mostly in your dogs and cats. And even though it's a British article, still the advice is solid and the advice is very, very sound, and it would still benefit you if you're a dog parent or a cat parent, to spot how your dog is getting overheated, because they suffer from the heat just as much as we do, if not more. You know, think about throwing on your winter coat and then running outside and it's 95 degrees outside. Figure that one out. That's not a hard one, is that? Just real quick, what else? Yeah, I did remember that one. This is one. This is one that is not hopeful, but I think it speaks. It speaks very, very much to the condition of man at this point in our history. It also speaks to the dichotomy of corporate greed and how the very same corporations that are paying between lobbying and media and, these front groups and so on to create and foment anger in these single issue voters, and then will turn around and do the exact opposite, but yet somehow the voters never wise up. I posted this 3 days ago, and this will probably be the last thing that I get to. In the years since the United States blocked Mexicans from entering, I'm reading from The Guardian, all proper credit. I didn't write this, I'm taking it from, ProPublica. Let me get that correct. This is from ProPublica. It's on that other side of information, or if you go to propublica.org, you will find this article. And if you don't follow or check out ProPublica each day, you should. They do genuine, real investigative journalism, and a lot of what they find is absolutely just would knock you on the ground. This is an article about, here's the headline. And I will read this, and that'll be the end. I'm just going to read a couple paragraphs, and then we're done. Pharma companies sue for the right to buy blood from Mexican immigrants. Think about that one. Let that sink in. In the years since the United States blocked Mexicans from entering the country to sell their blood, the two global pharmaceutical companies that operate the largest number of plasma clinics along the border say they have seen a sharp drop in supply. Now, the United States blocked this for health reasons, is the public reason. I can't specifically speak against that. I don't have a depth of knowledge enough to know it. Think about that now. You don't have Mexicans crossing the border to just for the farm jobs, the meat packing jobs, the construction jobs, the landscaping jobs that Americans will not do because they are brutal, dumb anguish labor. They pay nothing. So we won't do them. But these folks will. You had people crossing the border, going to these clinics that are right inside the U.S. border to sell blood. Is that what we have become as a human species. To sell blood, to have enough money to eat and keep a roof over their heads. Is that where we are? Jen talked about, we're not going to improve as a society until we start becoming one again, until we start caring about each other again, until we start making it once again a principle that, when the poorest person is doing better, then we all do better. In a suit, I go back to the article. In a suit challenging the ban, the companies acknowledged for the first time the extent to which Mexicans visiting the U.S. on short-term visas contribute to the world's supply of blood plasma. In court filings, the companies revealed that up to 10% of the blood plasma collected in the United States, millions of liters a year, came from Mexicans who crossed the border with visas that allowed brief visits for business and tourism. And again, that is propublica.org, lest I be accused of not proper credit. That is propublica.org. You should check them out. That should do it for us for this week. Again, please stay tuned to the group page during the week, but I do not expect that we are going to be with you next week. I think we will be in Philly for the rally. But keep an eye on the Facebook page. Let me take you through the social media really, really quick. We are on Twitter. We continue to gain followers, and I'm thrilled. Thank you for that. And all of these social medias, please give us a like, a follow, a subscribe, whatever the appropriate word is. We survive on that. We don't want to be the tree in the forest. Eventually enough of you will get noticed and somebody will buy some advertising, and then I'll come to you multiple days a week. Unless you don't want me to come to you multiple days a week, and then maybe, but whatever. Twitter is at that Kennedy Talk, all one word. At the ampersand, at that Kennedy Talk. The email for the program, thatotherkennedy@gmail.com, all one word, of course. thatotherkennedy@gmail.com. Our Facebook, of course, our home group Facebook page. I really should take this page and hang it back here again so you guys can read it during the show. Is that other side of information. You're going to notice a pattern starting here. YouTube, of course, if you ever miss any of the live program, because it's a long program, I get it. If you ever miss any of the live program, you can always go to our YouTube channel. Yes, we have a YouTube channel. youtube.com/thatothersideofinformation. We are on Instagram, That Other Side of Information. TikTok is That Other Side of Information. My goodness, if you see snow, I remembered to do a TikTok video this week. That would probably be why. And Patreon is where you can subscribe monetarily to this program. Some of you have all of that money. All of it. All of it, all of it, all of it has gone back into the program to pay for internet, for an upgraded computer that I'm using right now, for microphones and things. We have never made money on this program, and I hope we will someday, but we have not. So take that, darn it. We thank you all for being with us yet again. We will see you probably in 2 weeks again. Stay tuned to the Facebook group for to let you know if that changes. We love you and we appreciate you, and we could not be here without you. And we hope you enjoyed the program. My deep, deep thanks to our new friend and our new family member, Jen Perelman, and check out her podcast, JENerational Change. Jen, the name Jen, JENerational Change. Check it out. That is us for this week. So please, until we see you again, and again, I think that'll be probably 2 weeks from now, I beg you to please take care of yourselves and each other. You know how to reach me. We'll see you in a little bit. Thanks so much.